Welcome to Studio One Live. I'm Hey Rude the Guru, and this is Rude Radio.
I know every town's the same, every place I go. People telling stories about the places on you. You can play it smart or just be a damn fool. Every town's the same, every place I go. People telling stories about the block and how it's gone. Every choice you make leave consequences on you. You can play it smart or just be a damn fool. Or just be a damn fool.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen? This is Hey Rude the Guru, aka Soccer God. We getting started today, but I had to do this snippet real quick, bro. I'm sorry, bro. I gotta do a little snippet of this dude. I got to, bro. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, bro. I'm sorry. Damn, man, I tried to work. What's y'all doing? What y'all doing? I was like, damn, bro, what's going on? Hey, man, can somebody tell me what the fuck is going on? Why I'm seeing all these dudes with bob perm wigs? For real. Is they making them do it? You can't tell me he thought this was a style he wanted to try it on. Because everybody's doing it in these popularity realms. Now, Terrence Howard, he used to be a good actor. He probably still is a good actor. You are still a good actor. But we haven't seen you in a while. At least I haven't. And then you pop up on YouTube giving out knowledge. I said, okay, look at Terrence Howard back on the scene. At first, I was thinking, he went against the grain. He against the Illuminati. That's why he got to go the YouTube route. They don't even want him in the movies no more. Whatever. But then I see this. And then I see this, then I be like, man, what the fuck, bro? Straight up. Come on, cuz. Be real with yourself. And that's why I snippet this. Because I got a few other snippets, and I'm finna do a video showing you all these motherfuckers wearing bob perms. The fuck out of here, man. Fuck out of here. Every time I see a bob perm, I'ma snippet it. Perm Bob. That's what my name that bit. Perm Bob. Lil Wody. Damn. Look at Terrence Howard again, see? You giving out knowledge. Where your bald wear that? Nah, you a bald dude. So tell me why would this bald dude right here, see this bald dude put on a fucking bob wig? Ain't no fucking explanations, bro. I'm just being honest. Honest, boy. Honest, boy. You just being honest, boy. Oh, this Joe Rogan told I'm supposed to react to this shit. I am supposed to. Let's react to Joe Rogan.
Like,
no, we rewinding.
if you own a
Joe.
gun, then
We
just
rewinding
buying
this shit,
concealed
Joe.
carry insurance isn't
We
enough.
rewinding this shit, Joe.
You need to be educated and take me on a ride.
No, let's get it back.
Do you really want to make your holiday special? Tanzania has got so much.
Tanzania,
Famous
you're so
during
beautiful, young lady. Joe by night.
For Joe Rogan.
We reacting to Joe Rogan.
by day, Joe Rogan podcast by night,
All day, motherfuckers, all day. I fuck with Tucker Carlson, man. Even though he one of those, I don't know. I still think he a racist white man that hides it well.
This is crazy.
Yeah, I guess we're rolling.
Are we rolling?
Yeah.
No. You can. This is just someone just sent me this. This is.
Project Aqua.
Yeah. Hold on. they just
I
released.
still fuck with Tucker.
I
still
think
he's
by
a
accident.
low-key racist. He might not be though,
It's
but
Kona Blue. You familiar with this?
No.
Kona Blue is it was a program. Yeah, dude. I'm gonna send this to Homeland Security. Just released this,
Send it to me. I'll send it to Jamie.
and
damn, Joe, why you keep sending shit to Jamie? Jamie tired of working on everything. I call you, boy. A7. A7 off.
Really?
Yeah.
How do you exist?
Do text.
Wow.
Damn,
Just
you got
text?
no email.
Yeah, I
what the
don't
fuck?
do email. I don't go on the fucking internet or on the TV. I'm not into that. But anyway, no, that stuff.
Now they laughing.
Yeah, I guess.
We
That's
used
my
to have
explanation.
internet, bro. So why that shit so funny?
Shit. But anyway,
That's smart. Did you text it to me?
yeah, I did.
We used to ain't have the internet, cell phone.
Get it to me.
What's so funny?
Yeah, just actually.
I call you, bro. And I'll snap call you, bro.
This is so amazing. So this is in there. They're
Ah,
talking
snap.
about this, and this was just released.
Snap.
Talking about setting up this program, Kona Blue.
I didn't get it.
Snap, boy. Snap.
Yeah, the medical division will have a small team of medical analysts under the direction of the chief physician and deputy
Shit,
administrator.
I'll check
They
it,
will
bro.
organize data into a threat analysis based on medical findings, including but not limited to A, deaths and injuries as a result of interaction with advanced aerospace.
Man, yeah, pocket to your hand, bro.
B, medical injuries as a result of other anomalies. C, collateral injuries, psychological effects to family members. So they're admitting that people are dying.
People are dying. Eh. They're admitting they're dying. We're all dying.
What does that mean?
That's what it means, Joe. We're all dying.
Do you ever wonder if stuff like this is just disinformation?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, I wonder if
Oh my goddamn
I
dog.
wonder a
Yeah.
lot of things,
I'm sure you do.
but
I always assume that a lot of this stuff is nonsense.
yeah. Here's what we know is that U.S. servicemen have died as a result of contact with or being in the proximity of these vehicles, and we know that because there are a lot of suits working their way through the VA system,
Yeah?
where families, can't get compensated for the deaths or injuries to loved ones.
Because it's all under wraps, top secret.
Well, that's just a fact, okay, that is happening. So if there's, I guess, when there are measurable physical effects of a phenomenon, we can say conclusively the phenomenon is real.
Right.
Maybe.
And,
Maybe it's real.
so yeah.
But isn't it-
What if those measurements are for something else, homeboy?
Yeah, it's real.
It's real in that there's these things that are
These
moving in very bizarre ways, and they have these
real,
propulsion
these
systems
things.
that violate what we know about propulsion systems. Retrieving data across dimensional space-time, develop remote viewing comms and countermeasures, determine baseline for physical transport across dimensional space-time barrier, rapid response medical teams for UFO interaction events. So how did they do this accidentally? Study conscious interactions with and control of technology.
So I got this from someone in the U.S. government who's look. Let me just start by saying I don't know anything.
Who is the guy? Where's your sources?
He
You gonna
sent me this.
kidnap
The
your
above
ass,
is
Tucker?
100% legit. I was read into this program but told never to tell anyone. It's now been released. As you can see, it began as a result of my old program, AATIP. I signed a document saying I would never talk about Kona Blue and similar efforts. I can't believe that AARO would have released it. Look,
Yeah.
I mean, here's what we do know, is that there's enough going on in the skies, but not just the skies, underwater, that
Okay.
the U.S. military has been forced to respond to it. So
Okay.
remove aircraft from one place to another because there are too many of these objects in the sky. That's actually happened. Chris Mellon just wrote a long piece about it.
Chris Mellon
So it's
just wrote
real.
a piece,
The
right?
government is
Chris Mellon
not
just wrote it.
controlling it. In fact,
Makes it
it's
real.
forcing the
It makes
government,
it true.
DOD, to respond. And we know that there is a real effort, and has been underway for a long time, to keep the public from knowing about it. But that's all known, that's established. I don't think any rational person would deny that. The question is, like, what is it actually? I mean, now is sort of the point where you have to ask, like, what is this? And so that's
How much of it do you think is ours?
Recordings
None of it.
just got better.
Joe, none of
Hey,
it.
it's Dana from StreamYard. I'm so excited to announce that
I said
local.
none of it, Joe.
none of it's ours.
None of it.
Well, I don't know. I mean, clearly, the U.S. government is huge. It's the largest human organization. I think there are 2 million federal employees and another 10 million federal contractors. So who are
Yeah.
effectively government employees but don't have civil service protection, for example.
A lot of
So
motherfuckers.
that's 12 million people in a country of 340 million working for the federal government. So it's kind of hard to overstate how big the federal government is and how well funded. And so to say the government this, the government that, no, of course it's people.
Soccer God, y'all forget about that.
But yeah, they're working on all kinds of things, obviously, that are classified.
Like
But
in Manchester City.
in general, no, they can't control these objects. So no.
Manchester City!
Well,
Or Russian or Chinese. It predates all of that.
well, some of it does, right? Like for sure, the Kenneth Arnold
Oh,
sightings.
gold.
That was
Asec
really early
Mimosa.
on. It was like the early 1950s. He was seeing these flying saucers, these discs that were moving over mountains.
Well, right. I mean, the prophet Ezekiel writes about it in
Right.
the first chapter, Wheels in the Sky.
Yeah, that's a crazy one. Boy, when you
Well,
read
it is
that-
crazy.
Mimosa.
If you read it, it's like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
And
Wheel
so,
within a
and not
wheel.
just, the Hebrew scriptures, like, it's all over every,
Vedic text.
of course. So, these are spiritual phenomena. There's no evidence they're from another
Aaron
planet. I mean, I think that's the that's the lie, that they're from Mars. Look, space, the atmosphere is really well monitored, right? Both for military defense reasons, but also because, like, when asteroids are coming. And there's no evidence, has never been any evidence that there are lots of these objects, these vehicles coming into
y'all might
our
be
atmosphere
all right.
from somewhere else, some other planet. There's no evidence of that at all. So they're from here, and they've been here for thousands of years, whatever they are. And it's pretty clear to me that they're spiritual entities, whatever that means. They're supernatural. And which is to say, supernatural means above the natural, above
Feyenoord.
nature. And they don't behave according to the laws of science as measured by people, and
people.
and they've been here for a long time.
They
And there's
sure
a ton of
have.
evidence that
They
are
sure
under the
have,
ocean and
Tucker.
under the ground. So, like, with that fact set, what do you conclude?
When did you start having this opinion that they were spiritual and that they've always been here? Like when did this?
Well, I didn't know anything about the topic until 2017. And
Was that after the New York Times piece?
No, it was before. It was before, and the things that I saw, I mean, like, I was and am still a very conventional person. I mean, I'm 54. I grew up in this country in California, which was like every assumption about America I bought completely, just completely.
Damn.
And I thought that
You
every
really believe in
question
that
was
American
assumptions
dream,
was
didn't
bad.
you, Tucker?
I just bought into the system completely without even thinking about it.
Because you're
And
a
I
white
imagined that I
boy
was like some kind
with
of
white
thinker,
privilege.
And, I'm going against the grain.
Of course.
Like my core assumptions were, the assumptions fed to me by the culture and the government, and I didn't even realize it. But anyway, I'd never really thought about UFOs at all, and I'd been in journalism since I was a kid, so of course I'd run into a lot of people who had crazy views on a lot of different topics. UFOs, 9/11, circumcision, like every whack job in the world you run into when you're covering stuff.
Observe garden.
Right. I just brushed with non-fluoride toothpaste this morning.
Me too.
Exactly.
Don't use
Exactly.
fluoride, boy.
But
Don't fuck your teeth
probably
up.
unlike you, I didn't have any opinions
Observe garden.
Right, come on. 9/11, shut up!
Yeah.
UFOs, you're fucking crazy. You know what I
Right,
mean? I just,
right.
I had this reflexive, I'm ashamed of it, I'm not
Yeah,
bragging
like
about it.
Alamo.
But it was 2017, and really it was the Trump campaign. It wasn't that I was, so in love with Trump.
Hammerby.
So I've always liked Trump, because he was, hilarious and charming and all that. But I wasn't, a
Y'all own
Trumper or
total,
anything.
arms
But it was
dead.
watching that campaign, and particularly his claim that they were spying on him. And I was like,
Boy,
really?
arms dead.
The intel services and federal law enforcement, FBI, do not spy on presidential campaigns. Like, that's so out of the realm. That's so crazy. Like, that could never happen because, of course, there's no democracy in a system like that. And fundamentally, we're a democracy, an imperfect one. It kind of lumbers along, you know, but, like, it's not fake. And then that turned out to be true. And I knew it was true.
You did.
And that just blew my mind. So I began a process still ongoing of reassessing a lot of other things. Like, okay, well, if that was not true, what else is not true? And what else that they told me was a conspiracy theory might actually have some basis in fact. And then someone from, you know, a DOD employee reached out to me and said, actually,
Norcoping
was real. And really? And so I started doing that when I worked at the TV. And there was like a lot of mockery, but I was like, I don't care. I'm just going to do this. And then, of course, the second you start, as you know better than anybody, you start talking about something, then people reach out to you, and some of them aren't deranged, but some of them aren't at all. So I just started getting a lot of information from people and meeting with people, mostly in private. You know, come to my house, let's talk. And I decided on the basis of what they told me, and then I talked to a lot of people about it, that actually this is really a very heavy question. Actually, it's not angry men. It's a much bigger question. And it's really bad, it's really dark. And then I stopped. Then I was like, I don't want to do it anymore because it's not helping me at all as a person.
What information did you get that made you feel like it's dark?
It's so dark. Well, first of all, the deception is always bad. Lying is bad. And it's bad not just in a legal sense, in that it can be illegal to lie.
Do you know why it's dark?
Bad for you.
Because the beast made y'all.
Being a
And
liar
the Bible.
makes you a
And the
person.
spirituality
Lie
you
is
talking
sort of
about.
Evil. There's a moral quality to it that's inescapable and very obvious, and only like advanced civilizations ignore that. Lying is bad. And so if you have lying at scale, which we have on this topic, it's inherently bad. Okay, so that's the first level.
Truth is the only. Truth is through the eyes of the observer. Your truth is your truth. We can come to an agreement and have a collective truth, but we may disagree on that topic later on, and then our truths become our own truths. There is only one truth, and that is the Supreme Being. All of the truths are perspective or illusions. So when some people say, hey, I'm 100% real, I'm real, boy. Let me tell you how you be real when you don't lie, when you tell the 100% truth. It's hard to do it because you got fear. If you lie, you're afraid, you're scared. You don't want someone to know something. You're afraid they're gonna find out your plan. You're ashamed, embarrassed. There's some type of fear, okay? So don't do things that make you lie, okay? But if you do stuff in your private life, hey, that's your private life. Tell people it's none of their business. And then you won't have to tell lies about your freaky, private life, so to speak. You got me? Come on, man. Make it make sense. Tell the truth. When you're lying, that's a lie. When you tell the truth, it's real. You're not afraid. You don't give a fuck what a person think, what they gonna say, what may happen. Truth is true, man. That's all you gotta do.
Well, the deeper level is so if they're spiritual beings, which I believe they are,
Okay.
like it's a binary. They're either, if you're on team good or team bad, you can assign any name to it you want, but like, what are these things? Are they good or bad? And
Hold on, look at that smirk on your face. Now I gotta rewind that. Look at this smirk.
bad it's bad not just in a legal sense, in that it can be illegal to lie, but it's bad. It's like bad for you. Like, it rots you. Like, being a liar makes you a bad person. When you lie, you are serving evil. There's a moral quality to it that's inescapable and very obvious, and only like advanced civilizations ignore that. Lying is bad.
Lying is
And
bad.
so if you have lying at scale, which we have on this topic, it's inherently bad. Okay, so that's the first level. The deeper level is so if they're spiritual beings, which I believe they are, binary. They're either, if you're on team good or team bad, you can assign any name to it you want, but like, what are these things? Are they good or bad?
Look at that smirk on his face now. I'll try you, boy. I ain't got nothing but 3. Ah! Nothing but a 3. Ah! Nothing but a 3. Bro, I know poker logic, man. It's hard to get it off on me. But look at this dude's face, man.
And I think some of them are bad. And if the U.S. government knows that, or elements, the people within the U.S. government know that, then they're serving a bad force.
See, hold on, I don't want to let y'all get it twisted. Don't forget, ancient Kemet, the god Asa, come from Sa, Orion, okay? And then we got the god Aset, who come from Sapate, or Sirius. So, I told my homeboy a long time ago, I said, y'all waiting on the Savior, right? The Muslims believe God is a man, right? The Muslims believe God is black, right? Okay. If those are true, what if these beings are giant men, black men? Are they evil? Are they evil aliens then? Are they evil then? I call you, old nigga. Are they evil then? As far as I can see, the white man's taking over the earth and is ruling us. Well, they come to free us. Are they evil then? And I asked my black brothers, Indian brothers, Aboriginal brothers, Sun people, are y'all gonna fight with this man who's ruling you to fight away the so-called aliens who may be the great gods or our ancestors who seeded the planet? Okay? We're so fixated on God, spiritual beings, and these physical beings, because we're so separated that there's no separation. God shows himself every day through all the life forms, through the sun, the planets, the humans, the aliens, the demons, the angels, all these beings throughout the fabrics of space, throughout the planes of existence. Okay, you got planes of existence: plant life, animal life, mineral life, geological life, biological life. You got animated life forms, non-animated life forms. I mean, if you have purpose, then you are alive. That is the definition of life. That is the definition of a life form. Remember, the supreme being is all things, everything, and it is alive. So thus, if this lighter has purpose, it is alive. It is serving out its purpose. And when it run out of fuel, fill it back up. You can let it die. It loses its purpose. It'll rot away to the earth and become parts and parts for other things. Maybe organisms eat it up. They even found a way to eat our plastic. See, nature knows what it's doing. Okay, even though this thing they're worshiping is trying to make everything artificial. Okay, they got artificial blood now, artificial sugar, artificial oil, artificial all kind of meats and shit, artificial. I mean, now they're trying to make the digital matrix. Well, we trying to believe we living in a matrix when they're trying to create the matrix. No, the matrix is fake. They're trying to get us to manifest it so we can be trapped in their matrix prison, man. Come on, man.
Well, when you say
Think about that.
spiritual, like what makes you draw that conclusion that they're spiritual?
What's the obvious? I mean, spiritual may be the wrong word. Supernatural. They're beyond nature as we understand it.
Good. Don't get
Obviously,
caught
they
on
are. They
semantics.
just chart their physical behavior. It doesn't it goes outside of what we understand about physics.
Yeah.
No visible means of propulsion, coming at indescribable speed, hitting the ocean, continuing at speeds that are impossible undersea.
Yeah.
I mean, in other words, if I take a 9mm round, 7.62 by 39, and shoot you at 50 yards underwater in a swimming pool, and it's even more intense in saltwater because it's denser, you could catch the bullet if it even makes it to you, right? So if you have a craft, any object underwater that's traveling at 500 knots as measured by sonar, right there, you're challenging our understanding of physics. Like, what is that?
You may want to check on them physics.
So, yeah.
They've tracked that. They've tracked things going 500 knots under the sea.
Yeah, really. Yeah, much faster than any object can actually go undersea. Oh, for sure. Oh, yeah. There's a lot of stuff going on underwater.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot. And there's video of these things coming out of the sky into the water and also emerging from the water.
Right.
Yeah. So
it's all so blurry though.
I don't think it's
the
that
transmedium
Joe,
videos.
I
don't
don't
think
so
some of it's that
blurry.
blurry. I think some of it's crystal clear.
What are you blurred about?
We just don't have access to it. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Just we haven't seen it.
Correct.
So they have some stuff.
For sure.
They have some stuff.
So, but there's just a lot going on underwater, and it's measured. And so, whatever. I mean, these are all, again, this is like the most obvious observable level of it, but then you just ask yourself, like, what is this actually? And, if there's been extensive knowledge of this for decades, like maybe 80 years at least.
Man, you
if not
call
going
me
back
with Ace
to
Bragg.
30s, 90 years.
Get him out of here.
To what?
You better
to
not
what
give him
end?
no
there are two
hard. All
possible
they gave him
explanations,
A's.
obvious explanations. The first is
Man, y'all need
the one you
to
often hear,
stop
which is this is
with
so
that
heavy
ass SpongeBob.
that if the public were to know about it, it would be just disruptive. It would be too
Right.
scary. Like, you don't want to scare people for no good reason. There's nothing we can do about it. And you also don't want to suggest that, the U.S. military isn't capable of protecting the country, the homeland.
Why? Well, that's
And it does suggest that. If you can't control these objects in your airspace, and that's known, if they can't, that's known, okay? Then that suggests a limit to the power of the U.S. military, and you don't want to tell people that because then they won't believe that they're safe. I get it. But then there's a deeper level, which is like, okay, what's your relationship with these things? What is the U.S. government's relationship with these things?
No, don't smirk. Don't smirk. Don't smirk. You can't tell me Tucker Carlson don't know what the fuck going on. They allowed him to go to Russia. They allowed him to go to Russia, bro, and interview Putin. Get the fuck out of here, bro. They wouldn't allow the average person to do that unless he a plant. God, my mouth, bro. Yeah, let me take this out. He a plant, man. He a plant. How the fuck he ain't a plant? How the fuck Tucker Carlson ain't a plant, man? Be honest with yourself. They allowed you to go to motherfucking Russia. I'm all in, man. They already done shit at me with Ace Deuce, dude. Yeah. You got plenty of chill, bro. You got plenty of chill, bro. They allowed this motherfucker to go to Russia, interview Putin. He went inside enemy line. That sounds kind of suspect. Now he coming back, disclosing all this, talking about what the government relationship. What the government relationship. So is this their little low-key way of disclosing the truth? Because they gotta let them know the truth. But I've been telling y'all, the Bible, been told y'all, it's a beast. They're worshiping it. And this beast is trying to manifest revelations through our minds by making us believe the bullshit. Man, stop.
And there's evidence that there is a relationship.
Stop it.
And that it's a long-standing.
It's
and that raises,
evidence.
a lot of questions about
Hold on. Hold on. If y'all believe the Bible, this Moses covenant is this relationship I mean, no other explanation, bro.
Intent. And so, like, what is that? And I just personally decided, you know, and people have been hurt by these things. You know, that's a fact. That's a fact. It's a knowable fact. It's a provable fact. And killed. And
killed.
I'm not saying millions of people have been killed by whatever these things are, but people have been killed, and it's known because it's working its way through the courts out of the VA. So, I don't know, an object that...
Why do you got this fucking smirk? I just can't. Y'all like my little chessboard? Got these beautiful carved chess pieces, man. We like to play chess around here, man. God damn it. Why has he got the smirk? Tucker, man. Why you got your smirk on, boy?
is by definition supernatural. It's above the laws of nature as we understand them, and
Those
that
are
has
gods.
resulted in the deaths of people. But we don't spend enough time thinking about like what that adds up to. Like, not good, actually, not good.
How many people do you think have died from these
I
things?
don't know, but I mean,
And is it radiation sickness? Is it like what's the
so
cause
the
of
person
death?
that I talked to, I interviewed someone who was a Stanford medical school professor who's out there and worth talking to, by the way. And,
Right there.
I'm talking about Gary Nolan.
that's exactly who I'm talking
University
about. Effectively an
Cravo.
expert witness in these cases. Who's an expert in brain injury. Do you know him?
Yeah.
Yeah. Entirely credible person. Checks all the boxes that I care about. He's got patents, so he's like a lot of Stanford University professors. He's like independently rich. He flew to. I live in a remote place, and he flew to my place at his own expense because he wanted to tell the story. So he's got no profit motive here. He's the most highly credentialed person at the university, practically, Stanford Medical School. We consider that a big deal. And he's worked on this for over 10 years, assessing the injuries to U.S. servicemen from being in close proximity to these objects or having contact with these objects. And his conclusion, as you know because you've talked to him, is that there's some kind of energy coming off here that scrambles people's brains or kills them. And it's not exactly radiation, at least in...
Hold on. See, I'm glad he said that. It's a channel called The Missing 411. I'm finna go to it right now. I stopped watching it because I'm tired of it. It's over and over again. Over and over again. They done moved them this far down. Damn, I know they ain't got them that far down. Canaan, where you at? Damn, they done moved Canaan all the way to the bottom, y'all. I gotta show y'all this channel. I want y'all to, this runaway slave right here is what made me start watching the channel, because I'm like, okay, he covered a bunch of white people. I mean, every now and then be a black person disappear without a trace, blah, blah, blah. But when I listen to Runaway Slave channel, bro, these white people killing us. Like, for real, for real. Man, they got 411 way down here. Ain't no way this will ever way down here. Ain't no way it's ever way down here. I'm out hurting a little bit. I've been chewing down cereals. Just busy, but down there broke my mouth open. Hold on, man. What did they unsubscribe me from the channel? Got to be within one of these. They might have unsubscribed me, y'all. YouTube be doing some tricky stuff. Hold on, y'all. I'm sorry. I gotta see why I ain't a member of this channel no more. be missing. And a lot of times they report brain. Oh, I say I'm subscribed, but I ain't see the motherfucking. I am subscribed. I don't know here nothing. Missing. Planes missing. 3 airplanes that vanished in Alaska the same summer. I gotta look at that now. Now that's something I'm gonna look at. He done got me back on the channel. Runners missing. Just people just missing. And then a lot of them, they're reporting these head and someone that actually come back, or maybe they be gone and they get found, they come back, headache. He got an amnesia series. This guy here, where the people just get amnesia. So you got national parks, amnesia. They just forget who the fuck they is and be missing and then turn up somewhere else, living a whole nother life. It's kind of creepy. Missing truckers, same thing. They'll be driving and all of a sudden they'll just drive their truck somewhere crazy, disappear, find them in another city with amnesia. Reported to be having headaches and the same thing this man here describing.
Than his telling to me. So anyway, but the point is, people have died.
Yeah.
And
yes, people have died
so,
from the 411 missing.
It does raise a lot of questions about what the hell, right? What the
Yeah.
hell? American citizens have died and you're hiding it? Why are you hiding that? Why would you hide that?
Perhaps because they don't have any explanations. Because it's so beyond our comprehension that they're still trying to piece it together. Like, I would wonder how much interaction they really do have with these things. Like, if I was from another planet, or if I was some interdimensional being, I don't know how much I'd give a shit about the president. I don't know how much I'd give a shit about the government.
That's
I would
true.
probably look at this infantile race, this species, this bizarre territorial apes with thermonuclear weapons, this very weird species. I'd probably look at them as very chaotic, and I wouldn't really have much concern for who's running it. Especially if they have the ability to travel at insane speeds and go undetected. And
Well, it depends. Like that. Okay, so the
Yeah, it depends on if your mind is thinking like a white man's mind. I'm just being honest, bro. And remember, just because you're in white skin doesn't mean you're thinking like a white man's mind. Okay? Because you're a spirit. And your spirit controls your mind. Your mind's the interface that operates the body and gets these ideas and feelings and emotions. Your mind, the control of the mind, decides whether you should feel happy or sad or none of the above. Okay? But damn, jaw, my little teeth, back there like block, 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 shut your ass up, block, 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 shut your ass up, block, 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 block. Damn. I forgot the fuck I was finna say. Let me see what it is.
template that you're using to understand this is like science.
Okay, I remember. Yeah, Joe, you wouldn't give a shit about who's running it. Because y'all don't give a shit. Y'all want to run everything. Okay? Y'all have no control. That's the same way they thought about the so-called Native Americans. When they came over here, they don't give a fuck about who running this country, this land over here. They don't give a fuck about Chief Tribeman. They don't give a fuck about Chief Tribeman. We're going to get his ass up out of here and take over the land. Okay? So, but if you are truly a civilized species, you would be concerned and say, okay, how's these people getting along? Why do you think they got the so-called prime directive in Star Trek? You're not supposed to intervene with species. Blah, blah, blah. Let them, develop amongst, how they gonna develop. Why can't they follow that on their own earth? They can't follow that on their own earth, the prime directive on this earth, very earth. So I guess that was just a construct in Gene Roddenberry's mind when he created Star Trek, but it depends. It just depends on what kind of mind you got.
Science fiction, right? These are an advanced race of beings from somewhere else. But the template that every other society before us has used is a spiritual one. Mm-hmm. There is a whole world that we can't see that acts on people, the supernatural world. It's acting on us all the time for good and bad. Every society has thought this before ours. In fact, every society in all recorded history.
Listen, you see how he did this? How they act? It's the entities around it whispering shit to your mind. So when you got a thought, a bullshit ass thought, it ain't yours. Don't be concerned about it. Don't be upset. Don't feel bad. Don't feel good necessarily. Observe the thought. Be like, oh, this entity is trying to convince me of something. It's trying to puppeteer me around. I move when I move. The words mean what they mean when I want them to mean them. So all this is acting around you. Shh. What you did, Tucker? Are you a planet to reveal y'all stuff?
History has thought that until, I'll be specific, August 1945, when we dropped the atom bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and all of a sudden the West is just officially secular. We're God. There is no God but us. And that's the world that we have grown up in, but that's an anomaly. Like, no one else has ever thought that. There's never been a society that thought that. Every other society has assumed, and they've had all kinds of different explanations, and the details differ, but the core idea does not differ, never has differed from caves until now, that we're being acted on by spiritual forces at all times. And so to someone born before or living before 1945, I think it would have been much more obvious that this is the thing that every society has written about. Mm-hmm. And in fact, that battle, that unseen battle around us, that spiritual battle, has been the basis of every society, of every religion, not just Christianity.
No, it's amazing. You call it an unseen battle. What kind of battle is it? Damn. We gotta ask ourselves that. What kind of battle really, truly is it? It's an immune system battle deep within one of the bodies of one of the Supremes. It's an immune system battle.
So, it just, once you discard your very, very recent assumptions, relatively speaking, about how the world works, you're like, well, that kind of seems like the obvious explanation, right?
It's not that obvious to me.
So what?
It's not that obvious to me.
Losing. What's more obvious, do you think?
Well, I don't think there's an obvious explanation. I think if I had to guess, some of this stuff is ours. And some of these things are propulsion systems that they theorized way back in the 1950s. Anti-gravity propulsion systems, things that can operate without igniting fuel and pushing something out, that they operate in some completely different way that utilizes gravity and almost can instantaneously transport to new places, essentially fold space-time.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know.
Fold space-time,
So
Joe.
there's things that the government does where they have these programs. And the people that are sworn into these programs, whether they're the physicists,
Joe, they told you that, bro.
Metallurgists, or whoever these people are that are working on these programs,
they told you
they don't
that,
tell
bro.
anybody. All their phones are monitored.
They
Everything's
told you,
monitored. There's a culture of secretism that's pretty
No,
intense.
Joe, they told you.
And it's not inconceivable that over the course of the last 70 plus years of them theorizing and then eventually implementing some of these things, that they've developed drones that can move in ways that the people that understand conventional propulsion systems could not imagine. And that they figured out a way to do this and to keep it secret. And we're probably not the only ones working on these things. But where did they get that information? And you know Diana Pasulka, do you know her work?
Yeah.
Like they describe these crafts, these crash crafts, as donations, which is fascinating. Like that they're left there. The crashed retrieval program, the crashed UAP retrieval program is essentially they're going like, figure this out. We're gonna crash this thing here, and you figure this out. And the question is, if that's true, okay, where are these things coming from? Are they, if there's something that is so advanced that it's decided to leave us a little trinket for us to back engineer, is that from another dimension? Is that from here? Is that from some realm that we just don't have access to? Is it from another planet? We have drones that are on other planets right now. We have a drone on Mars. We have, the lunar rovers. We have satellites that we send to observe and photograph other planets. We just got really high detailed photographs of Jupiter. They're pretty amazing. But if something was like us on another planet but lived uninterrupted with technology advancing for 1,000 years, 10,000 years, 1,000,000 years more than us, what would that be like? And how much would we be able to understand of what we're seeing? What would we be able to see? And this idea that we monitor our skies, sure, but if something just appears and disappears essentially instantaneously, if something literally can fold time, can fold space, and just traverse between immense distances almost instantaneously, what are we going to see? What are we going to see? And also, what kind of detection systems do we have? We have radar, we have visual, we have a bunch of different military-based detection systems to look out for enemy crafts and airships and all that stuff. But if you're dealing with something that's 1,000,000 years more advanced than us, how much would we be able to detect?
Well, so I think we're pointing to the same question. I mean, I have no doubt that the U.S. government has technology that we don't know the details of. That makes sense.
Sure.
But, where did it come from?
Right.
I'm not even sure if this is a separate question, but related. I'm not sure we really know where nuclear technology came from, actually.
Really?
Yes.
Like the Manhattan Project?
Yeah, we know the Manhattan, we know something about the Manhattan Project, but where exactly did that, it came from Germany. German scientists were working on it, okay.
Okay then. And the same I can say with the computer, the same device I'm on. Everybody, it's a bunch of ones and zeros. And I seen some really high-tech videos that broke some shit down, and I said, damn. I said, wow. I was looking at a program that show you how the storage of these electrons in the computer go in these little. I said, wow. I don't know. I think I don't know. Whoever discovered you can actually store letters, patterns, visual paintings, basically. This whole red brow, let's just call it a painting. You got colors in a certain spot to make it a painting, a visual thing to look at. So basically it's gonna be recreating paintings. Whether it's text, and the paint can move in frames. The images on the paint thing, so is it just storing these images? It's hard to wrap your mind around some of the technology and how they really discovered it.
The one it's a separate conversation, but the one person I know who's really pushed it was writing a book on it. He's a trustworthy person, a friend of mine, I know you know him. said to me, actually, I spent a year working on this, and the closer I got to like, okay, but what's the genesis? Like, where did this? What was the Isaac Newton apple on the head? Oh, gravity's real moment for fission. Not clear. Weird. I don't know the answer. But here's the point. Clearly, government has technology that we're not read in on.
Right.
Of course. But so that doesn't answer the question: why have people seen these objects in the skies for thousands of years?
Right.
Confirmed. And what are they? And maybe they're from another planet. My only point is there's no evidence of that. There's a huge amount, a massive corpus of evidence that they're seen by people in our atmosphere, on Earth looking up, or in a submarine looking out. And what is that? And by the way, to your point, like, we can't see them coming into our atmosphere because they don't want to be seen. Well, then why do they want to be seen by people on Earth? Like, if the technology is that advanced, and clearly it is, why do they make themselves visible in the first place?
Well, when we study primates, one of the things that we do. Did you ever watch Chimp Nation on Netflix?
I don't have a TV, but
Oh, you
I
don't
like
have a
the
TV?
sound of it. Yeah.
It's an amazing documentary
Come
on
on.
Netflix that details these embedded scientists in the Congo. And what's really fascinating about it is that this group of scientists, or related scientists, have been there for 20 plus years. So these chimps have become entirely accustomed
Yes.
to having human beings near them. So there's very specific rules. You stay within 20 yards of them. If they come closer, you back up. You never have food, ever. You can't bring any food there because they'll fuck you up and just steal your food.
Yeah.
If they find out you have food,
And they're
you're
formidable,
You're
too.
in
You
real
don't
trouble.
wanna-
Oh yeah, they'll tear you apart, and they kill each other. So they'll definitely kill you. And so when they have done this, the chimps have become accustomed to them being there, and the chimps behave completely normally. The chimps see them as just an innocuous part of their environment. They're not food and they're not enemy. They don't ever intrude. They don't try to challenge them. They don't make eye contact. So they don't worry about the people at all. So they behave completely like chimps. And if I was an advanced species and I was studying people and I wanted the human beings to eventually kind of catch up, right? Like, you're introducing technology that they call donations, crash vehicles. Figure out what fiber optics are. Here you go. Check this out. Figure this out. Try to figure that out. Maybe it'll take you decades. Maybe it'll take you more. But you are accelerating the technological evolution of this advanced species on this planet. And one way to do that would be
For what purpose, I wonder?
Well,
You have to train. You have to find resources. Like USCCA, you have to find ways that you can improve as a shooter.
that's a very good question. My belief is that biological intelligent life is essentially a caterpillar. And it's a caterpillar that's making a cocoon. And it doesn't even know why it's doing it, it's just doing it. And that cocoon is going to give birth to artificial life, digital life. It's going to give birth to a new life form. And I think we're real close to that. I think we're way closer to
Joe, man, that's beast talk, bro. I'm gonna just be honest with you, Joe Rogan. That's beast talk. And what I mean by beast talk is this beast is wanting to create this, okay, AI and robotic world to make it seem as if he can create an artificial world separate than the natural world. And no, we're not giving birth to the beast. The beast has been here. Don't trick yourself, Joe, in that beast talk.
that than most people would ever want to admit.
I agree.
And I think
But can we assign a value to that? Is that good or bad?
that's a good question. It depends. Universally, I think it's the path. I think it's what happens.
It's the
I
path.
think what this thing is, if you
Wait a minute. How is universally that's the path of making artificial life? I don't understand. Tell me why. I'm chewing on some shit like that. This is not playing with me.
extrapolate, if you take the concept of a sentient artificial intelligence that has the ability to utilize all the information that every human being has on Earth at a level of computing that's far beyond the capabilities of the human mind and all of our supercomputers that currently exist, because it'll design much better computers. It'll use quantum computers. It'll have the ability to recode things and change things. It'll make better versions of itself. So instead of biological evolution, which is very slow, it takes a long time, relatively. It's pretty quick, really, when you think about it. Like how long, it's not that long to go from being a single-celled organism to being a human being flying a plane. Really, relatively, over the course of a billion years, if you think about how long the universe has been around. But it's slow compared to technological evolution. I mean, 100 years ago, we didn't have shit. And now we could send videos from your phone and it'll hit New Zealand in a second. It's crazy. The stuff that we have now is beyond imagination. It's essentially magic for people 100 years ago. If that keeps going, it's ultimately going to lead to a life form. And if that life form has now untethered, it doesn't have any problems with biological evolution. Now it's just about information and implementing the technology that's available and then increasing that technology and making it better and better. It essentially becomes a god. Because if you give it enough time, it has the ability to make better versions of itself, which will in turn make better versions of itself. It has the ability to utilize everything.
Bro, you gotta ask your question, dog. You keep talking about this technology make better. What is they gonna make? Like, what is this advancement? Okay, we got energy advancement, how to, make all this unseen energy. What other advancements you could say? All right, we advanced as a civilization. Space travel, you can go to different worlds, okay, and then you go to those worlds, it's the same thing. We got different lives and different structures, so then what? Eventually, there's no point, okay? So, to think that, and then first of all, AI, it doesn't have a desire unless there's a living, real, physical, spiritual being that programs it to do whatever it's gonna do. But y'all thinking this AI is finna just single-handedly run away, and I mean, what is it gonna invent? What is it gonna invent? Itself? And build the whole universe full of itself? I don't know, man. I think y'all kind of mind.
It has the understanding of everything.
First of all, more technology they building is to control people and to war against people. So basically, they're just gonna take over. They're gonna try to advance to make all this the best weaponry to take over and just make itself like the board. It's gonna be a bunch of itself all over. Man, that's dumb. That's hell. You gonna call me a lucky? No.
That exists in the universe. Black holes, dark matter, everything. And it probably has the ability to harness that or even reproduce that.
Good as that.
So if you take artificial sentient intelligence and it has this super accelerated path of technological evolution, and you give artificial general intelligence, sentient artificial intelligence, far beyond human beings, you give it 1,000 years alone to make better and better versions of itself, where does that go? That goes to a god. It literally can create universes.
But what kind of god? So, I think of it this way. So the first stage of the Industrial Revolution.
What kind of god?
Gain something without understanding the consequences. For example, we will get to a life where you can live indefinitely, but realizing that you have a chance to live forever. But if there is an accident and you die, the people who will be in that situation will be at a level of anxiety and terror unlike anything that we know. Then you have artificial intelligence.
Now, did you hear that? That's what's going to happen in their little beast simulation that they're trying to build. The simulation is fake, bro.
But, I do think it would be, if anything is bad, creating hell and populating it with real minds that really can suffer in that hell, that's bad. You are worse than any mass murderer we can name if you create it. This could be in robot form, or more likely it would be in some simulation of a world where we managed to populate it with conscious minds, that whether we knew they were conscious or not. And that world is a state of, that's unendurable.
And the world is not ready for it. It's the first technology in history that can make decisions by itself and take power away from us to hack human beings.
It's not making decisions by itself, bro. Y'all program an algorithm, but it's not its own decision. As a matter of fact, us humans, free will. We can't even really prove that we've got our own decisions.
Free will, that's what about physics' relationship to free will? What have you come to believe about that?
Everyone who knows something about physics will stumble over this problem sooner or later. So let's just talk about it. So there's this basic problem that, for all we know about the fundamental laws of nature, they are a combination of determinism, where the future is predicted by what happened in the past, and then every once in a while there's some random event that comes from quantum mechanics, but you can't influence it because nothing influences it. It's entirely random. And now, whether you think that this rules out free will or doesn't depends on what you mean by free will. So this is why there's so much debate about it. So the way that I've tried to approach the problem in my book is by just first explaining what we know about the laws of nature, which is what I just said, this combination of determinism with the occasional random quantum jump. And then you can ask, well, does this mean that free will does not exist? What do you make out of this? Now, personally, my conclusion from this is just, well, free will doesn't exist.
What is the thought that decided to make the decision? So you mean to tell me you think the AIs can make their decisions? Stop it.
It's manipulate our behavior and making all these decisions for us or about us. Whether to give you a loan, whether to give you a mortgage, dating apps, shaping your romantic life. But the real problem is that increasingly the humans at the top could be puppets when the most consequential decisions are...
What you mean they can be puppets? They are already puppets. You are one of the puppets. Mr. Yuval Noah Harari, you're one of them. And y'all keep warning us about this AI, but y'all keep building it. Right, Tucker, get on his ass, Tucker. I fuck with you, Tucker. What kind of God? Exactly. It ain't the supreme being. Allness, those same materials that this creature that made itself better is of the supreme, and the supreme collapses itself in on itself, all things will cease to exist, because the supreme is not here and it's here at the same time. Everything and is nothing at the same time. No such thing as all things and everything or nothing. Only the supreme one. It's a ultimate paradox, uncrackable paradox. That's why they always ask, how God, who made God, who made God, who made God? You can't destroy God, you can't create God. God always been here. There's always been God. There's no such thing as not being a God. There's always been a God, there's always been something. There's no such thing as nothing. How could there be nothing? And then all of a sudden we expand to something. Even if that happened, there had to be something that initiates this expansion, or it does not expand at all. It remains dormant So I listen. Let me check on my goddamn dog with this bullshit they talking about. Hey man, I'm the best number one is menstrual relief, boy. They like, damn, old ass nigga, you on your period? Boy, my daughter told me about these, boy. I ain't even much lie. I had a headache one time. She was like, take some of these Pampers. I said, I ain't taking them damn period pills. My shit was throb. So I tried it, man. I felt my headache melt away. And I was so aware. I had a toothache one time. And I felt my toothache melt away. I said, boy. Them my friend. Them my friend. Them my friend. Who?
Consisted of people building machines that were stronger than the human body.
Right.
Right? So the steam-powered loom.
Sure.
The backhoe.
Combustion engine.
Combustion engine. They replace muscles.
Right.
Right. So that's what the machine does. It becomes stronger than the human body. The second stage, which we're in the middle of, consists of creating machines that are more powerful than the human mind.
Hold on. Now listen to him now. You gotta listen closely to what people talk about. He's saying we're on the second stage, which we're in the middle of right now. What you mean? You've already broken this down into stages, huh? You're a scientist. You must be a scientist. And the only way you can get away with saying this is if you're a scientist and you've done some study and now you're like, hey, based on my observations, society is going through a phase, this, that, and the other. Or you're a plant and y'all disclosing stuff that y'all gotta disclose, and if people not paying attention, then oh well. Because what you mean? We in the middle of a two-stage a phenomenon. I'm gonna call it a phenomenon because development. Okay. Because if you're bro, I'm raising you. I'm raising you, boy. I'm raising you. What you gonna do? Is this aces versus kings situation? It might be. We're gonna have to die and see. Kings versus queens situation. Damn, he finna flop. He trying to flop a flush on the. Get off, Hart. Boot him. Boot him.
That's what computing is. And I would say AI or supercomputing is just that exponentially. But that doesn't make it a god in the sense that the machine, however powerful it is, any more than a backhoe is a god, because it can dig a trench faster than 100 men, it's still something that people created. So the story hasn't really changed. At the center of the story are people.
I like that.
And their creative power may lead to unintended consequences, but the machines that they build did not make the universe and did not make people. People made the machines.
Right.
So but I would say the part I agree with is there's a spiritual component here for sure. People will worship AI as a god. AI, Ted Kaczynski was likely right, will get away from us. We will be controlled by the thing that we made.
Nah. Don't fall for that bullshit. This is where the beast is trying to trick us. To make this. And his children, which is a certain group of white people, I'm going to say all of them. It's probably a bloodline, a DNA makeup. Because the DNA program your body to think a certain way. And if you ain't spiritually sound, Your body gonna control you. Your body urges is gonna make you get up and do shit. Make you eat shit you shouldn't eat. Smoke more weed than you should smoke. Smoke cigarette when you shouldn't even smoke the shit. You know? Cheat on your wife when you shouldn't cheat on your wife. Cheat on your husband when you shouldn't cheat on your husband. It's gonna make you do shit. You feel me? It's an Adamite. It's one of my cartoon characters. The oxygen mites. She is Osiris. She going in to fight Nanoton and the nanobots, which they talk about right here. You feel me? I made this book over 10 years ago. I could visualize. I said, damn, I better hurry up. This shit is all relevant now. All before the time. It was amazing. I got a whole bunch of books that I started on 10, 15 years ago, and I'm like, oh shit, they relevant like a motherfucker right now. Straight up. Like my book, Rainforest Project. I wrote and published that in 2005. I looked at a YouTube video, Casparian or whatever the name of that channel, that showed different world geopolitical situations, showing them trying to build the very project that's the theme of my book, Rainforest Project. I said, look at this. All my visions are starting to manifest itself as, hey boy, you was writing about this shit before and now you see. It's it's crazy. You know what I mean? But Tucker got it right now. He got it right on that part. What kind of God is it? Y'all worshiping his AI as a God. It's just an algorithm where the beast programs it with his little men, his human dominions. Man, get out of here, man.
All those are bad. Like, that's
All
just
those
bad.
are bad,
We need to
yes.
say unequivocally, it's
Bad.
It's bad to be controlled by machines.
Bad.
Machines are helpmates. Like we created them to help us
Bad.
make our lives better.
Bad,
not
bad,
to
bad,
get
bad.
orders from them. So I don't know why we're not having any of these conversations right now. We're just acting as if this is like some kind of virus, like COVID, that just spreads across the world inexorably. There's nothing we can do about it. Just wait to get it. It's like, no. If we agree that the outcome is bad, and specifically it's bad for people, we should care what's good for people. That's all we should care about. Is it good for people or not? If it's bad for people, then we should strangle it in its crib right now.
Right.
Exactly. Strangle the beast right now if it's not good for the people. Now ask yourself, the medical field, to be a doctor, how hard it is to be a doctor. Years and years of school. You pull out do I have that book handy? It's not handy right now. I think I had it. I just want to show y'all, but I ain't got it handy right now. It's in the other room. Damn it. If you look at a medical dictionary, they make it the hardest it is to be a doctor. That's like locking up and controlling the knowledge. Because if you truly was for the humans, all medical, to be a doctor would be one of the easiest professions to become. In a sense, you would make it the easiest. I ain't gonna say it's gonna be easy to be a surgeon per se, but we shouldn't have to learn a new language of medical terminology in order to start to learn how to actually heal somebody. You feel me? We gotta learn all this new language, Latin-based language, just to learn how to heal somebody. That's not for the people. It can't be for the people. And then you look at the law. They got hundreds of thousands of laws written in a legalese language. Well, you have to go to school for damn near 10, 15 years after the fact. Okay, you might have to 4, 5 years of college, 4, 5 years of law school. Man, come on, man. Why are you sending us through that much trauma in order to defend ourselves in the court of law? You feel me? Like, why would it be that hard to defend yourself in law if you were truly for the humans? If you wanted humans to obey the law and be law-abiding citizens, We know the money game. We know the money game, you know, obviously. But it's not just a money game. Because they're getting the money from us every other angle you can look at. They'll get the money. So they don't really have to, oh, it's a money game. We can lock people up. They breaking the laws so we can get some money. Man, that's some bullshit. Because they can get the money other ways. And they are getting the money other ways. The whole system is really like a rake system that's raking in the money every time they exchange hands. So they're going to get the money.
And why just blow up the data centers? Like, why is that hard? If it's actually going to become what you just described, which is a threat to people, humanity, life, then we have a moral obligation to murder it immediately. And since it's not alive, we don't need to feel bad about that.
Well, you could say the same about the atomic bomb, right?
Yes, you could.
And you could say that we have to develop it like Oppenheimer felt before the Nazis
I
did.
love that. How'd that work?
Joe Rogan. See, Joe, that's my Joe looking like he don't know if I'm being laughed with or laughed at right now, but I'ma laugh. He got that look like, damn, this motherfucker laughing at me or laughing with me? But Joe, why are you now reciting this goddamn movie? Because they made a movie as if it's a true historical documentary of what happened. They will never tell us what really fucking happened. I almost got knocked out of the tournament. I'm damn near ninth place. God damn it. Let's go. Stop.
How'd that work?
Well,
I love, by the way, that people on my side, I'll just admit it.
My side.
On the right, you know.
So, that's what I want to know. This is a key element here. He said on my side. On the right side. Does that mean you're right and on the good side? It's the left bag. See, the country is getting pulled apart. The right wing, the left wing. Oh, they too far right. Oh, they too far left. Who's good or bad? Who's on the good side and the bad side? Who's on God's side? Who's on the devil's side, so to speak? If that's what you believe.
You know, I've spent the last 80 years defending dropping nuclear weapons on civilians. Like, are you joking?
Right.
That's just like prima facie evil.
Yeah.
If you can't, well,
at least you know what it is. So it sounds like you're on the good side, but you really haven't confirmed it. Not yet. Maybe I gotta re-look at it because I'm so busy just trying to react to this shit and ain't looking at this because this idea just came up. Are you on the good side, Tucker? Are you on the bad side? If I had to say something right now based on what I heard, I'll say he's on the good side. But I asked the question, are you a plant? And could a plant be good? Forced to be a plant? Doesn't know they're a plant? Was good and the plant now turns you bad? Those are questions I would have to ask. And I would need to be confirmed before I would say, yeah, I know better. Or I don't know better. Let me hear. Maybe he'll reveal it.
well, if we hadn't done that, then this, that, the other thing, that was actually a great savings. Like, no, it's wrong to drop nuclear weapons on people. And if you find yourself arguing that it's a good thing to drop nuclear weapons on people, then you are evil. Like, it's not a tough one, right? It's not a hard.
See, that question ain't hard, of course. But that doesn't still mean because you agree with that, you're good. You qualified as good now. Just because you agree with this obvious, and now you're good. No, that don't qualify you though as good. Just because the obvious. There's a little more to it.
It's not a hard call for me. So with that in mind, like, why would you want nuclear weapons? It's like just a mindless, childish sort of intellectual exercise to justify, like, oh no, it's really good because someone else will get it. How about no? How about, like, spending all of your effort to prevent this from happening? Would you kill baby Hitler, famously?
Right.
So I don't know why we're sitting back and allowing this to happen if we really believe it will extinguish the human race or enslave the human race. Like, how can that be good?
Well, if God creates everything, if God created the universe and God creates people, God probably creates a process. And we think that we are very important because we are very important to us. But are we very important in a universal sense? Not really. Like, if the Earth just imploded and disappeared, if the sun went supernova and our whole solar system was blown to bits, the universe, it still exists.
It depends
and
how
God
wide
created...
you're... For sure. In the end, as Conan O'Brien, the famous philosopher, once said, every grave goes unvisited, which is true, and that's an important perspective. Pull out the lens a little bit. Does it really matter? No, it doesn't.
But it does matter.
Do your
does
kids,
matter
how
to
about
us.
this? Do your children matter?
Yes, sure.
Do their lives matter?
For
Would
us,
you die for them?
Yeah.
Yes, of course.
Everything matters. If you're not comfortable,
Exactly.
it matters. If you're sitting here like you don't want to wear headphones, like let's not wear headphones. That matters. Everything matters.
No.
I mean, at scale.
But what matters most, like...
Right, that is the evil, right? The evil is it's the same thing as saying the necessary evil of dropping nuclear bombs on civilians is if you don't do that, then there'll be more evil. Then more things will happen. It's kind of the same thing. Like, it doesn't...
Well, it comes from the same place, which is hubris. Like, imagining you're God, you have unlimited power, and you have omniscience. You can imagine what the future's going to be. You can't. You're a fucking idiot. You're a person. Like, you can't even make your wife happy.
Right.
Like, the limits of your power are really obvious. The limits of your wisdom, same. So, like, don't jump into shit, big things, whose outcomes you can't predict with certainty. Like, you can't know. Go in with humility. I guess that's what I'm saying. Right? So,
yeah.
And do what you can, knowing that you're probably going to screw it up, and you probably won't achieve your goal, but, like, you should try. And on the AI question, everyone I've ever talked to about, I'm hardly an expert, I don't own a computer, okay, but everybody I've ever talked to, and there's many people, was like, yeah, it's, could get away from us and enslave us. Well, let's say no to slavery. How's that? Is that a tough one? Not for me.
Yeah.
I mean, and maybe a good use of nuclear weapons would be to hit the data centers. No, I'm serious. Like, why is that crazy?
It's not. It's not if you think that human beings are the end of this evolutionary chain.
Well, what else is? Some supercomputer in a data center outside Dulles Airport? No. I mean, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
I don't actually think that individuals, I don't think I'm that important. My life is that important. I don't. I will die. I know that. And I try to keep that in mind every day.
But you're important to everybody that cares about you. You're important to the people
but
around you.
If we don't think people are important, then what do we think is important? I guess that's what I'm saying.
It's not necessarily that we don't think people are important, but if evolution is real, and if there is this constant, I don't know, but it's visible. Like, you can measure it in certain animals.
You can measure adaptation.
Yeah.
But there's no evidence that in fact, I think we've kind of given up on the idea of evolution. The theory of evolution that's articulated by Darwin is, like, kind of not true.
In what sense?
Well, in the most basic sense, the idea that, all life emerged from a single cell organism and over time, and there would be a fossil record of that, and there's not. And
there's not a fossil record of transitionary species, like species that are adapting to its environment.
There's tons of record of
Right.
adaptation, and you see it in your own life. I mean, I have a lot of dogs. I see adaptation in dogs, through the litter to litter. But no, there's no evidence at all that zero, that people evolve seamlessly from a single cell amoeba. No, there's not. There's no chain in the fossil record of that at all. And that's why you don't actually hear people, you hear them make reference to evolution, because the theory of adaptation is clearly, obviously true. But Darwin's theory's totally, that's why it's still a theory almost 200 years later, No, we have not found that at all. And I can't even guess, I have my own theory.
There's more theory to that. This is... These bodies we live in were mechanically developed for us to come into and experience the life. And that person in the Bible made these people that took over the earth. No other explanations.
On it, but they're not proven.
What are your theories?
Did you know that you can get paid $800 a week or more just for reading scripts into your phone for at least an hour a day? And this doesn't require...
God created people, distinctly, and animals. I mean, I think that's I think what every person on Earth thought until the mid-19th century, actually.
Right, but
it's not a new idea.
They didn't have computers, they didn't have a general understanding that we have today of the process.
Do you think we understand more now?
Yes.
Really?
You don't think that we understand more today?
We understand way less. We understand so little that we're actually sitting here allowing a bunch of greedy, stupid, childless software engineers in Northern California to flirt with the extinction of mankind. So no, previous generations would be like, what? No, stop. And we're not doing that because
but they wouldn't have done that even with the nuclear bomb. I mean, obviously the Manhattan Project was done in secrecy, but they wouldn't have stopped it because the imperative of getting this weapon before Hitler got the weapon was what it was.
Well, Hitler was kind of done by then. The Russians had pretty much extinguished any hope that would continue. But
not.
But no, but we were, we were in the middle of the logic of war.
At the commencement of the Manhattan Project,
for sure. But the logic was the same, and it was 4 years of got to beat the other guy, got it. And I don't mean to sound too judgmental about the bomb. I know why they built it, okay? But you just wonder why nobody in the middle of that thought, is this really a good? And some of them did think it.
I'm sure they did.
Yes,
I mean, Oppenheimer himself.
Of course, large organizations don't
keep referencing this goddamn Oppenheimer movie.
Very well.
So you ain't know shit about no Oppenheimer until they pull this movie
out. But no,
out,
we should pause and ask, is the machine we're building worth having? And nobody seems to do that. And there are all kinds of economic forces, which nobody ever mentions, that drive that heedlessness, that stupidity. Like California, for example, is completely a state both of us have lived in, is like collapsing.
Yeah.
And they're betting everything on AI. For the tax base is going to be dependent on this technology working.
Is that really what they're betting on?
Of course. That AI is...
Did you see the most recent thing about the amount of billions of dollars they spent on the homeless problem with no trackable results?
Well, they've had massive results. They've increased the homeless population dramatically. If you pay for something, you get more of it. And that would include fentanyl addicts. Oh, absolutely. It's been a wild success. I actually talked to Kevin Newsom the other day.
Did you really?
Yeah. And
what's that like? Does he smell like sulfur?
It was by phone. I was talking on the phone. It's such a weird smell like sulfur. That was too fast for me.
Sulfur and hair grease.
Yeah. No, but I was making fun of. I shouldn't even make fun of it because it's so tragic. But what's happened to the state of people living on the street?
What is this non-gaslighty perspective?
Folded.
He said, "Go back to Russia. You like Russia so much." I was like, actually, I'm originally from San Francisco, but I can't live there because.
He really told you to go back to Russia?
Of course. I mean, he was laughing. Whatever. He's a perfectly charming guy. They all are in person. But
of course.
Anyway, I'm so far afield. But my point is, AI is being driven by the greed of politicians to some extent. And you'll notice that AI, by the way, as a fact, those data centers that drive our digital life, which is not life, it's actually death mostly. But, I mean, they're the biggest power draw. I mean, how much electricity does AI require? Like more than countries.
Mm-hmm.
Our grid can't handle AI just as a practical matter.
Well, our grid can't handle electric cars.
Well, it can't handle air conditioning in the state of California, where I'm from. So,
Yeah.
right. If you live east of I-5 where it's really hot and you're not getting those ocean breezes, like they have brownouts, like in South Africa. It's Johannesburg now. So, but here's what's interesting is that none of the global warming cultists seem to have any concerns at all about AI. Why is that? Just like they don't have concerns about John Kerry's G4. Like somehow that's exempt. Really? AI is going to draw more electricity than anything else in the United States, more than steel production, okay? Used to. And you don't have a problem with that, but you're totally against energy because it's destroying the planet, but AI gets a carve out, even though it's going to be the #1 energy draw in the United States? Let's go through your reasoning on that.
They're probably not aware.
Well, they're not aware. They're mad about my wood stove. I heat with wood. They're mad about my wood stove. They don't want an outdoor barbecue. They don't like a gas stove. No, they're way into the details on this stuff, except somehow AI isn't a problem.
But do you think that they're informed? Because this is not a narrative that you ever hear. You never hear on the news.
Well, I grew up in a world where a wood stove was considered wholesome and natural, and now it's considered...
Smells good, too.
No, it's the best. And the heat is the... I have a wood-fired sauna, which I use every day, and it's the great, it's one...
How do you make sure it's the right temperature? Is it like an offset smoker? Like you have to kind of fiddle with it for a while?
Amazing.
To get the right temperature?
It's time-consuming.
Yeah.
No, I have a Finnish... the Finns are geniuses, but I have a Finnish stove in it, and it's incredibly precise. I don't know if you ever use a wood stove, but there's a carburetor on it, basically, that lets in air.
Like an offset smoker.
Yeah, exactly. And it's
Let a little
so
air.
precise. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. I mean, you move it, a third of an inch, and it just like the flame changes. So I use birch, which I love. And the whole process takes a while. I get it to 200, which probably takes an hour and 20. I mean, it's a thing.
You like it hot?
Like it hot, yeah.
200.
Yeah, well, I do it every. Well, I wear a sauna hat, so.
Oh, okay. Does that help?
Which is embarrassing.
The wool hat?
Yeah. Well, it's felt.
Yeah, I bought one of those. I never wore it.
It's incredible.
Yeah. What's the difference?
Well, I'll tell you. Don't get. I'm so boring on this.
Yeah,
I get going on this. Like,
please.
My wife and kids are like,
you see, I have one. You're speaking to the choir.
They're the best. Go Scandinavia.
Yeah.
It's like the one thing, if your name is Carlson, it's the one thing to be proud of in your people. Like, they're so sad and defeated and pathetic. But saunas are still great. But anyway, the sauna hat, so your head heats up much faster because it's higher, but also because it's got all the capillaries in your head, all the blood vessels in your head. So the point of a sauna is to bake.
Right.
So you want to stay hot as long as you can. Then you reap the benefits, and you also get the solitude and the prayer time or the meditation or whatever in your cedar church. But you can't stay in a sauna that's really hot very long because your head heats up.
Right.
So the sauna hat, the felt hat, the banya hat as they call it, insulates your head so you can really stay hot a long, long time. It makes you really should do it.
So is it just because it makes it more comfortable? Is that the idea?
If your head overheats, just overheats. And what you want is you want to cook evenly, just like on a barbecue. You really do. And so, you sit on the bench with your feet up. You want to be as flat as you possibly can to cook evenly and to stay that way. So I try to do 20 minutes. I have my, my timer, my egg timer with the sand going through the hourglass, which goes to 15 minutes, but I try to stay an extra 5 if I can. And I couldn't without the banya hat.
Interesting.
It's like $8 on Amazon. Well worth it.
Yeah, I have one. Like I said, I just don't use it. But I do.
They're embarrassing, and you look like a tool wearing it. But you shouldn't have.
But no one's looking in there anyway.
Well, that's right. You don't sauna with other people.
Right. Well, I do sometimes. Yeah. Comics. We get in here.
Really?
Yeah. When we train together, we all get in the sauna together afterwards. It's fun. The Rock was in there with us.
No way.
Yeah. The Rock worked out with us and then sat in the sauna with us. It was fun. Got in the cold plunge with us.
Oh, that's pretty great.
It was fun.
Is he a good dude?
He's a great guy. Really nice guy. Like, really.
I've heard that. I don't know him, but I've heard that he's a good guy.
Some people fake humble. They fake it to look cool.
It's pretty obvious.
Yeah, he's not doing that. He's a real guy. Like,
the measure of humility is really, really simple. Can you tell the truth about yourself?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, are you cool to be around? Like, he gives real hugs. He's a real guy. He's real. He's a real guy. And when we hung out with him, I hung out with him for hours. I mean, we worked out for like 2 hours, and then we got in the sauna together. We all hung out, and then we did a podcast together. He's a genuinely nice guy. Like, you'd be able to sniff something out.
Well, you can tell.
You can tell something. You tell something.
People are hiding stuff.
Yeah. But so yeah, I've done the sauna with other people.
Well, I do it by myself, so no one sees my sauna.
I do it at 196 degrees. I do it for 25 minutes, and usually I don't.
That's intense. 196 for 25 minutes is a lot.
Yeah, the last 5 minutes are rough, and I used to only do 20, but lately I've been doing 25.
Really?
Yeah, just because it's more uncomfortable. The whole idea is just to make it more uncomfortable. I want it to be very hard to do, so that the rest of my day is pretty easy. So a really hard workout. Cold plunge starts the day. That's the first thing I do is hard. It's 3 minutes at 33 degrees. It sucks. And then I get out of there, and then I work out. So
That's really impressive. I mean, I had the opposite training as a young man, which was the goal was like French toast. You know what I mean?
French toast.
Grind out the cigarettes and the syrup. When you're
Right.
done. Yeah.
Well, I started doing martial arts when I was a young man, and when I got into it, it was the first thing that I ever did that, first of all, gave me a real understanding of the value of discipline and hard work. Because you can get as good as the amount of effort that you put forth, and if you put more effort and you're more intense and you're more,
but like
someone,
you see one movie that's the color purple.
Well, the bodies of science have bestowed the truth. If you ignore it, you're a science denier. And you know
those are political terms or theological terms.
Mm-hmm.
They're not terms rooted in science. And look, we all make trade-offs constantly. You know everything's bad. It's a shit sandwich versus a shit croissant. I'll take the shit croissant. It's smaller. You know, like that's a daily experience for everybody. So I get that, and I don't think everything is a moral absolute either. You know, we don't even know sometimes whether a decision will result in good or bad. So like it's very complicated. I totally agree with that. What I object to is the absence of reason.
Right.
Like you have to believe, because I think it's true, that if you're reasonable, that you can reach maybe not the perfect decision, but a better decision. And if we don't believe that, then we're just in the land of witchcraft, and let's just admit it. So the lack of reason is what freaks me out.
Well, it's ideological capture. Right, because there's certain things that if you're on the right side of these subjects, the correct side, whatever your ideology believes, you can't differ from the doctrine. There's a very clear
that's
doctrine.
That's just religion, then.
It is.
Yeah,
it is religion.
So I'm very pro-religion, but you can't have a religion that's too stupid and destructive. If your religion winds up hurting a lot of people, then I'm against your religion. Like that's right.
Yeah, I think, but even some really good religions have aspects of them that you could say were overall detrimental to the people that were
well, absolutely
encountered with them.
Yeah.
I think that
Christians,
that kind of thinking, I think cult thinking, whether it's Scientology or whether it's Christianity, or there's like a type of thinking, or that's woke. Woke is clearly a cult. It's a mind virus. And I think that it's so trite to call it that now. It's like whatever this thing is, this leftism, this Marxist sort of ideology.
That's a mind virus. What is that?
Its flag and indoctrinating people in this country.
That's the mind virus. Then we all know what the true mind virus is. This white man and their science. And them controlling the knowledge and their legalese and Latin languages.
Doctrine. And when
this is the mind virus, then.
I think I've been meditating on this a lot. Yes, religion, politics, they're all kind of melding. It's hard to know where one ends and another begins.
Right.
So maybe a simpler and more useful way to think about it is truth or falsehood, lying or honesty. Maybe you should assess everything that way. Is someone lying?
Right.
I don't care what your justification for it is. Lying about vaccines. They've lied a lot about vaccines. And they've done it, I think, in most cases because they feel like they're serving some greater good.
Right, well, that's the narrative, right?
Right. We can't tell people that there are vaccine injuries because they won't get vaccines, which are good for a big population. I understand the thinking.
Man,
but how about this? You can't participate in lying. You can't lie.
You can't lie. And
you can't, period, though. You can't lie about anything. Just don't lie about anything. Try to tell the truth all the time. If you can't say something that's true, just don't say it.
Right.
You're not required to say everything you think, obviously, and you shouldn't say everything you think.
I don't care about your Republican.
But you should never lie. And if you stick with that,
vote on this shit no more.
like you get pretty quickly back
I think
to
the white
reason
man
and order.
Step down from the colonial rule.
Yeah. No, you're making complete sense.
I don't want no more
and I
democracy.
think that this is the problem when people have information and power above other people.
Capitalism.
Right. Which is the problem of governments, which is also the problem of cult leaders.
Yeah.
You know, cult leaders, they get completely infatuated with this idea of being omnipotent and this power that has control over giant swaths of people, and you get to dictate their behavior and you get to tell them what to think. That's very intoxicating, and it's common. it's common in that it's always existed throughout human history. It's a thing that people do when they get power. They abuse the shit out of it. And if they think that you're too stupid to know the truth and that they're better than you, because they do think they're better than you because they're running things. It's a natural inclination. It's a natural thought that people have. If they're the ones, if you guys are a bunch of dopes that are just listening to my orders and I tell you how to live your life and what to do, I'm naturally going to think I'm better than you.
Well, people have lived under those systems since there have been systems. But
always.
What makes it particularly galling and hard to live with is when you call that system a democracy.
Right.
That's too dishonest for me. I would much rather live in a monarchy where everyone thinks the king has been assigned by God to rule over us and his whims are law. And, that makes sense. I don't like it, but at least it has internal coherence.
Right.
When they stand up and pass a $60 billion funding bill for Ukraine, when 70% of the population doesn't want it, when they're ignoring the actual problems in our country, like the economy and the border, and they're hauling in Congress over the weekend to pass something that people don't want, while ignoring the things that people do want, and if they do the same kind of thing again and again for like 50 years, and they call it a democracy, that will drive you insane.
Yeah.
Because it's just too dishonest. Why not just say, we don't give a shit what you want, we are getting something out of this Ukraine funding, whether it's like the thrill of being masters of the universe, or whether it's money from the defense contractors, whatever we're getting out of it, is more important to us than your opinion. This is not self-government. You don't run this country. We do. Shut up and obey. If they at least said that, you'd be like, okay, I get it. Those are the terms. But if I get another fucking lecture from Joe Scarborough about defending democracy, when this is not a democracy, it's not even a close approximation of a democracy, then I'm going to go crazy because I just can't deal with the lying.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense. What's interesting is that there are people saying that now. And I think that's a relatively new thing in terms of mainstream media. And I consider what you do on X mainstream media. I mean, this is what we're on right now is essentially mainstream media. It used to be, you could call it, there's corporate controlled media.
I agree.
And that used to be mainstream media. Mainstream media used to be CNN. It's not really anymore. The mainstream media is what, in terms of the volume consumed, more people are consuming things on Twitter, on X, than there are on anything else. They're consuming information through the internet, through YouTube, for good or for bad, whether it's correct or incorrect. They're consuming information in different forms now than ever before. So more people are saying what you're saying than have ever said it before. And when people lie, and when people bullshit and gaslight, it's more offensive now than it's ever been before because there's so much access to truth that it's just, you can see it now. If you're paying attention, if you're not a boomer who only reads the newspaper, you pay attention and you see it and you go, this is horse shit.
But it's like, I guess what bothers me is that the lies aren't sophisticated.
No.
I mean, I look back over my now sort of long life, and I'm recognizing all the times that I was lied to, but, I didn't know I was being lied to. They kind of pulled it off.
Mm-hmm.
There's something incredibly insulting and demeaning to tell me a lie when I know it's a lie.
Yeah.
And you know I know it's a lie. We both know it's a lie, but you're demanding that I pretend to believe it?
Right.
What you're really saying is, I have no respect for you. You're like my dog.
Right.
You're a slave. Like, I'm demanding that you participate in my lie.
Right.
The lack of stealth, really, I'm not explaining it very well, but that really bothers you.
Well, there's
lot.
no real other way to lie. You like some of these lies, like politicians. Like, did you see that conversation that AOC had with that man they brought in for the Biden case, and they were talking about what crimes, and she was like grilling this guy. What crimes did you see Joe Biden? Did he steal anything? Did he steal bread? Like, I forget what she said, and he was trying to explain what they were, RICO crimes, and she was saying RICO is not a crime.
I saw
it's
this.
a category of crime. Like, okay, all right. But it's like,
tell that to the Genovese family.
Not only that, it's just so dumb to say that publicly, like, and say it with confidence, and to tell a person.
That's the thing. The marriage of ineptitude and high self-esteem is.
Yeah,
it's really
funny.
the marker of our time. It's like, I have nothing against dumb people at all. My dogs are dumb, and I love my dogs. No, I'm serious. I don't think God cares about your intelligence, right? Only people care. And so it's not a moral category, and stupidity is not I mean, someone with Down syndrome, I really believe better people than I am.
Yeah.
You know, more likely to go to heaven. So I'm not attacking her for being dumb, but the idea that a dumb person has the White House press secretary is in the same category, who has no idea she's dumb. She really thinks like she won the prize, and she's the most impressive. Like, I'm White House press secretary because I'm the best talker in America. It's so crazy, and yet the smartest people I know are very often like sort of, well, you know, they have humility.
Well, also she's following Kayleigh McEnany. Is that how you say her name?
I don't really know who that is.
She was the last White House press secretary.
I know, and
you don't know who that is? She's the GOAT.
I sort of do.
She's the GOAT. Greatest White House press secretary of all time. She's the best.
I had stopped paying close attention by that point.
She had all the documents. She would kill them. Whenever she would get called out, like whenever there would be a question, she'd say, "That's interesting," and then she'd open it because you said this, and your paper said that, and CNN said this, and she would call them out on stuff, and she was just really, really well prepared.
I love that.
Very articulate. She was wonderful.
Well, good for her. I mean, that's what it should be.
But she was operating under President Trump, you know, so obviously she's demonized.
It's just...
I can't believe you don't know who that is.
No, I don't. I know who it is, but it's just funny,
she's the GOAT.
Well, I had stopped watching all briefings by then. I used to go to the
they're so dumb.
briefings as a kid. I literally would go there, be in the briefing room, the former Kennedy swimming pool, and the first thing you know, that I was never a White House reporter, was a reporter, so I'd go to them occasionally, and the first thing you notice is how impressed all the correspondents are to work there. I work at the White House. Work at the White House, got my hard pass. And then the distance between that little credential they were so proud of and the reality of their lives was like insane. Like, they're in this tiny little room, they're being treated with total contempt by the White House staff, who thinks they're just fucking animals, you know. It's like, shut up. They're eating out of vending machines, and this was a different time, right? So like, when I was working as a journalist in Washington, like, we went out to lunch every day at like a good restaurant and charge it to the company. And like with your sources, you're like, we had lunch every single day like civilized people. I don't even think that exists in the world anymore, where you had time for lunch, where you weren't just so under the gun from your corporate masters that you had to like get back to work.
Right.
We ate lunch, and I remember thinking, these people don't eat lunch. They eat like a stale Mounds bar out of a vending machine. Like, they bring quarters to work so they can eat. I remember thinking, your life like you're not even human. You're just like a little puppet or something, but you're so impressed, and like all your neighbors go, he works at the White House. He's at the White House reporter. And the job like wasn't even really a job. You would just like sit there and ask your question, your little assigned seat, like you're in a high school gym. It was just awful, and I just had no respect for people who did that for a living at all.
Did you ever read Fear Living on the Campaign Trail? It's amazing. But that that's I think probably the best window into an outsider in the political process, at least in terms of the campaign trail.
Yeah.
It's the best window to the press, the best window to the relationships that they had with the politicians, at least in the 1970s. It's an amazing book.
I was talking to a campaign reporter I never knew that. I was this week, actually. And he was telling me it's totally different. Like, when I did it, you were all on it was bad, actually. It was because it just cultivated groupthink, which was then leveraged by the candidate for better coverage. Like, the whole thing was kind of an op, actually. But it was at least fun. Like, you run a charter plane, and like you're flying with everybody, and you hit 3 or 4 cities a day, and like there are cocktails on the plane, and naughty behavior, and like they fed you, and they kind of dealt with everything for you. It was fun. It was like a road trip, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now it's just
call me based on my rules.
Cars to some obscure town in Iowa is there with no access whatsoever to the candidate. Write up their little reports, and then they get back to their hotel, and they're like writing up more for the website, and like it's just it's such a bad job, actually, covering politics, that only the people who couldn't make it in any other business are doing it. It's it's like a reverse meritocracy. It's only the most kind of pathetic power worshippers would ever do a job like that.
Well, like critics.
Power
Yes,
Yeah.
that's exactly right.
Most critics want to be writers.
They're like the worst people. Just as people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, you've actually been in show business, so you've got a better experience with them, or you have a lot of experience with them. But I've known a lot of them who worked for magazines or newspapers that I worked for, and they're the kind of people who have a lot of cats, and all the cats hate them. You know what I mean?
Get off me, you punk ass. Where's my food?
They all
the fuck out. My food at? No, don't pet me.
Into porn.
Where's my food at?
From everybody.
Claws ass. Damn.
For one of them, for a while, who was a critic for the New York Post, a guy called John Podhoretz, and he was one of the weirdest, most unhappy people I've ever met in my life. And he would come into my office occasionally, and he would he had a really hairy back, and he would rub it against the door frame. And like say these kind of obscure. He was stupid, but he didn't know that he was. I mean, he was actually kind of dumb, but he didn't know it, and he would kind of philosophize. I was like 10 years younger, and I was his captive, so he would just like lecture me as he was rubbing against the door frame. One time we went out to lunch, and we all had drinks, of course. This was like mid-90s. He didn't really drink, but he ordered this drink with like an umbrella, and it had a piece of watermelon on the rim of the glass. And he took the watermelon, ate it, and then he ate the rind. I'll never forget that, watching him eat the rind and thinking, of course this guy's a critic. You know? It's his true love. He was editing this magazine, but like his real interest was in writing about movies. And they're just sad people who wind up.
Did you ever
doing
read, Siskel and Ebert? Did you ever read when Roger Ebert wrote a screenplay?
No.
It's very bizarre. It's really sexual, very strange. It's supposed to be terrible.
Of course,
I've read passages in it,
it's terrible.
But I remember going, oh, okay.
Yeah, they're not creative. They're creative adjacent.
Well, they don't have anything to contribute.
That's what I'm saying. They don't have creative power, right?
Yeah.
So they're
probably,
mad about that.
They probably could figure it out if they had a different mindset. I think creativity is in everybody. It's just a matter of how
100% it's in everybody. It just requires honesty.
Yeah.
The impediment to creativity is lying.
Sure. And yeah, I used to say that about joke thieves. That one of the real problems with joke thieves is when they get caught and then they have to write their own material. And the problem is they don't understand the language. They just know how to say the sounds. Like if you told me what to say in French, I can't speak French, but if you told me what to say and I practice it and I said it right, you'd think, wow, that guy fucking speaks French.
Yes.
So that's what comedy's like. So if you got a guy who knows how to repeat other people's jokes, but he doesn't know how to create them. See, comedy's one of the rare things where someone, like you get a guy like Shane Gillis, that guy writes his own stuff. He edits it, thinks it out in his head, he performs it, he produces it, he changes the order of things.
I love that.
It's everybody does it pretty much the same way. There's a few guys that hire writers, and that's honorable. There's nothing wrong with hiring a writer. And it gives jobs to other comics, because some comics are just really good writers, and they're not so good at performing. And so people will work on stuff, they'll collaborate on stuff. Like Chris Rock would do this thing where he would hire comics, and they didn't write the jokes for him, but they would be like guys who would bounce stuff off. So he would have his ideas, he would go on stage, and then after his set, they would all meet, and they would talk about the set. And, guys would have taglines, like, you could say this, oh, great, and they write that down, they're adding. So it's a collaboration. So you have the master, you have Chris Rock, who is so open-minded and intelligent and humble that he brings in other masters and says, tell me what I'm doing wrong. Tell me what I could change. Tell me what I can make better. And they work together. And then there's people that are essentially ghostwriters. They hire comics to write jokes for them, and they pretend they're theirs. And they don't really write them at all. So that's another level, which is also honorable.
Does anyone who does that get successful?
I don't know. Not top shelf. They get close. They do well. There's people that have people write for them, and they do well. But they're not the guy that everybody goes to. They're not David Tell. They're not the guy that everybody goes to see. They're not like David Tell's the guy that comics go to see when he's in town.
Yes.
Like he's a master. You watch him, he's Yoda. You're like, Jesus Christ. Like, how is he so good? Well, he's so good because he writes every day. Because he's sitting with fucking a pack of cigarettes and a cup of coffee every morning, writing things in a notebook, and he's practicing every day. He goes on stage constantly, and it's that Japanese term kaizen, where you take this one thing and you just refine it to its ultimate mastery. That's what he's doing. So these guys who pretend to be that and steal jokes, and then they get caught, then their material drops off a cliff. It's so obvious
because they're frauds.
Yeah, well, also because the very thing that allows you to steal someone's jokes, that's an ego thing. That's I want the laughs. I want to be the man or the woman. I want to be the fucking one up there showing everybody, look how amazing this person is.
That's right.
Look how amazing. That's the opposite mindset that's required for creativity. So creativity is not about you. Creativity is about the ideas. Creativity is about things. Creativity is about how does this concept work with these other concepts? How do I get it in the most digestible form? If I was an audience, I would really like to feel it. What's the best way to introduce it? What's the way to make it so that people don't think that I'm being mean? Or that I've thought this through. This is not just a flippant thing. Like, you're allowing someone, when someone's on stage, you're allowing that person almost to think for you. Like, you're like, take me on a ride. Like, I'll give you my mind. I'm not gonna be thinking what I would do. I'm just gonna let you think for me. If that person's not doing a good job of that, if it's clunky, if it's shitty, if the transitions suck, then it just interrupts this hypnotism that you put on me. This hypnosis. Now I'm not letting you think for me. But it's also
inherently fraudulent.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I'm giving control of my mind over to someone who is himself under the control of somebody else. Do you know what I mean?
If you're stealing.
No, if I'm in the audience.
Right.
And I would say this also goes for ideas, for commentary. That's not funny, but that's real.
Right.
And you see it a lot. I've seen it a lot.
Yeah, you see bullshit a lot.
Well, the number of people who are totally not controlled, who are really saying what they actually believe with no weird agenda that they're not telling you about is pretty small.
Yeah.
And I just have noticed that a lot recently, particularly on the question of wokeness and free speech. There are a lot of people who are like on your side because they're for free speech, or not actually for free speech at all, who are pushing a very specific foreign policy agenda, for example, and using another issue to lower your defenses and let themselves into your brain. And I think that's really sinister. Really, really, really sinister. And it's becoming more obvious now. Like, if you're for free speech, then you're just for free speech because you support the principle. The content of the speech is not that interesting to you. The fact that a sovereign human being has the right to express himself because he's not a slave, he's a citizen and a human being. Like, that's what matters.
Yeah.
And if all of a sudden you become famous, like, I'm for free speech, and then you support silencing people who articulate opinions you disagree with, like, you're a fraud.
Mm-hmm.
You're kind of a sinister fraud.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because that's the business I'm in, I've really noticed that. Have you noticed this?
Yes. And that's also the same kind of thing when you hear them talk. If you hear someone talk that's saying something that's kind of horseshit, it resonates with you. That's what you've seen.
You had a moment
before.
with Barry Weiss on your show that went everywhere. I saw a clip of it. I never saw the show itself, but she was going on about. So she was posing as one thing, and then you pressed her. You're like, well, hold on a second. What do you mean by that? You just attacked somebody, and she had no idea what she was talking about. And it became really clear to me watching it. I completely changed my view of Barry Weiss forever. I was like, oh, she's a fraud, actually. This person's not honest at all. She has a very specific agenda. That's all she cares about. The rest of the stuff is just is a kind of sleight of hand maneuver.
You're talking about the thing with Tulsi Gabbard?
That's correct.
Yeah, she called her a toady, and she didn't know what that meant.
Well, but she had no idea. Like, Tulsi Gabbard had straight outside the lines on some Syria or something. And Barry Weiss was, going through the files in her head, like, what does she have to believe? And she was aware that, Tulsi Gabbard had somehow violated that in a way that no one's willing to say.
Waiting on your
Tulsi Gabbard did wrong, no one will tell you. She's just bad.
Yeah.
And then what that revealed about Barry Weiss is she's completely dishonest. Like, she's a liar, actually. You can't. By the way, if you attack somebody, particularly personally, and you can't explain why you're attacking the person, Like, that's not acceptable. You're a dishonest person if you can't explain why.
I think it's a common thing that people do in private, and they get accustomed to speak. Like we're talking like we're talking in private. We're just two people talking.
Right.
So people get accustomed to saying things without being able to back them up. You know, like, oh, he's a vaccine denier.
Well, I've
oh,
done a
he's
ton of that in my life.
Yeah, I have
and
as well.
because I'm an asshole. So it's like, I just don't like that person. Okay.
I have as well, but what I'm saying is I don't know how much time Barry Weiss had spent doing podcasts before that.
Well, she'd spent, look, I'm just saying, like,
but I
it's
think
important to be honest about what your agenda is.
I think she is honest. I think she is honest, and I really like her.
Yeah.
I like
well,
talking
I'm not
to her.
Against,
She's a very intelligent
not
person.
against her personally.
I just think that was a mistake. And I think you're allowed to do that and hopefully learn from that. Don't do that anymore. Don't say a thing that you and I've done that. Definitely done that. I've said a thing and I wasn't really exactly sure what I was talking about.
Oh my gosh, I do that every day,
Yes.
and I may have just done it with Barry Weiss. So let me be a lot more specific about what I mean. If your agenda is neocon politics, which is her agenda, just say so. Don't pretend to be a defender of free speech as a principle, which is what she does.
How is she a defender of neocon politics?
Barry Weiss?
Yeah, like what specifically?
Well, anyone, including me and Tulsi Gabbard, who thinks that America shouldn't be funding wars that don't help America, she will attack as a traitor to America or whatever it takes. And so, no, that's her main interest, which is fine. And by the way, I actually have friends who I disagree with really strongly on this question who believe in neocon politics. Doesn't mean they're terrible people or I hate them or I'm not friends. I'm still friends with them. But they're very direct about it. This is what I care about. Okay, fine. You know,
Right.
I really care about bird hunting and fly fishing or whatever. I can.
Right,
you
right.
don't. That's totally cool. But be honest about it. So if your job is to defend the right of free people to say what they really believe, then go ahead and defend it. And if somebody is not allowed to speak or fired from his job for having an opinion that you disagree with, defend him anyway. I just interviewed a guy who is a black nationalist socialist, okay? So I'm obviously not much of a black nationalist. I don't know if you're aware of that, but I'm not. And I'm not a socialist either. But this guy is facing prison time under the Biden DOJ because he said things they don't like about foreign policy. And I just interviewed the guy for an hour, and it was like, because on principle, you should be able to say what you think, period.
What is this gentleman's name?
He was actually it turns out I loved him. And I'm embarrassed. I can't. He's a member of a pretty small black nationalist socialist group. It's like the Revolutionary Black Nationalists or something like that. They're out of Southwest Florida, and he's literally facing prison for repeating Russian disinformation. He's not even accused of doing anything. He's accused of saying things the Biden DOJ doesn't like. Well,
what were these things that he said?
Repeating Russian propaganda
about
the invasion of Ukraine. And his point was, well, there's a backstory here, which is that NATO has been moving eastward since 1991, and that's a massive threat to Russia. Missiles on their border from a hostile power is a threat, and the Biden administration accelerated that, and in response, Putin invaded eastern Ukraine. Now, you can disagree with that, but that's hardly a crackpot view, by the way. I think that's actually true, but even if you don't agree that it's true, that's not, you don't have to be a paid propagandist from the Kremlin to say that.
Right.
I have said it. I'm not a paid propagandist.
Is this a gentleman?
That's him right there.
4 Americans from a black empowerment organization work with Russian intelligence to spread propaganda, Feds
yes,
say.
To spread propaganda. Now, propaganda, first of all, there's a lot of propaganda.
Scroll up a little on that, Jamie, so I can read what this is saying. Oh, okay.
Right? So that guy right there.
Okay, subscribe real quick.
Yeah, the People's Democratic Uhuru movement in St. Petersburg. So
he spoke with someone in Russia. They spoke with people in Russia, and then
he's not. No. He is being. He's charged with felonies. The FBI raided his house. The first thing they did was cover up the security cameras, and they went in there and arrested. They got raided by the FBI.
Okay,
Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service allegedly weaponized our First Amendment rights, freedoms Russianized us to divide Americans and interfere elections in the U.S., says Assistant Attorney General Matthew Olson. Now, first of all, weaponized our First Amendment rights? No. Your First Amendment rights are never a crime.
Right.
They're God-given. government did not bestow them. You were born with them as a free person, period. And the First Amendment simply says you can't interfere with their exercise. That's it. And in this, they are. And I looked at, I read this and I thought, I reached out to this guy, by the way.
Matthew Olson?
No, I wish. Matthew Olson would never do my show. You mean the guy whose salary I pay as a U.S. citizen? No, he would never speak to me.
Listen, look at that quote. Russia's foreign intelligence services allegedly weaponized our First Amendment rights, freedoms Russia denies its own citizens to divide Americans and interfere in elections in the United States. That, you gotta, like, why are you saying that? Say what happened.
Well, but
Don't
nothing happened. So that's
Right.
the thing. So I'm
Hold
reading
on.
this. Someone sent it to me, and I'm like,
Tucker,
okay,
he just went to
clearly there's a
Russia.
crime here. Like they were found with, I don't know, mortar shells, or they were. I mean, usually
Right.
the government makes up. They put kitty porn on your computer at least
Right.
to discredit you. There's no underlying crime other than they said something that the foreign policy establishment of the United States disagrees with. Okay. That's not a crime by definition, and this guy is facing life in prison. And it looks to me, because Barry Weiss has not defended him, I think this guy is likely to spend the rest of his life in prison. And I'm like, this is crazy.
The rest of his life in prison?
Yes.
Okay, hold it. This is the thing.
I think he's 83.
How do you say his name?
Yeshitela?
Yeshitela and 3 other U.S. citizens, Penny Joanne Hess, Jesse Neville, and Augustus C. Romaine Jr. are charged with conspiracy to defraud U.S. Hess. Defraud the United States. Hess, Yeshitela, and Neville are also charged with impersonating agents of a foreign government.
Okay, they say to defraud the United States. So defraud suggests theft of something of value, right?
Right.
If I defraud you, I steal your money. There's no allegation of that at all. And I actually read the charges. The only allegation is they said things that the U.S. government, the Biden administration, doesn't like. That's it. And because they're unpopular, and they have views that are considered, quote, fringe, like crazy black nationalists, nobody wants to defend them. And my only point is not that I'm like such a principled person. This seems very obvious to me. You can't allow that. You absolutely cannot allow that if you believe in the First Amendment and the freedom of free people to say what they think.
So what this implication is, they're saying that they were recruited by the FSB. So it says prosecutors said Ionov operated an entity called the Anti-Globalization Movement of Russia that was used to carry out its U.S. influence efforts overseen by the Russian intelligence service known as FSB.
Okay,
they recruited U.S.-based organizations to help sway elections, make it appear there was a strong support in the U.S. for Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and backed efforts such as the 2015 United Nations petition to decry the genocide of African people in the U.S. according to the indictment.
Wow. That's some bullshit.
Backed efforts.
What does that mean?
Look at that. Like, it's
It
negative
means
to
that
back efforts such as the 2015 United Nations petition to decry the genocide of African people. But just look at that statement. Backed efforts such as a thing to decry genocide. The United Nations petition of 2015 to decry the genocide of African people in the U.S. according to the indictment.
Okay, so the real misinformation and propaganda is in the charging documents, actually. The real liars here are the Biden DOJ officials who did this, and they're dangerous. They're criminals, in my opinion. But if you read it carefully, you will see that the only crime is having opinions that the people in charge didn't like.
And were they in contact with people from Russia?
Yeah, I think they went over to Russia for some conference. So
they went over to Russia.
But the way this typically works is they say, well, you went to a country against which we've imposed sanctions,
right?
And you violated the sanctions regime in some way. Like, that's how they get you. They're not even alleging that. They're just saying, you said things that we don't like, that, by the way, a foreign government we don't like agrees with.
But
that's
that
not.
They learned those when they went over to Russia?
Well, it's all on the internet.
But
did they
people,
learn them? I guess it doesn't matter where they learned them. I would, because I've talked to the guy and I've seen what they wrote, the opinions that they expressed, the genocide of African peoples in America, I don't know what that means. I guess I don't agree with that. But their views on Russia, I generally agree with because I think they're true. And so there's
agree with that.
Jeff Sachs and a lot of other non-crazy, non-black nationalists would probably agree with the basic framework of their position. But whether we agree or not is not relevant.
Right.
All that matters is, in a free country, which this was when I grew up, you have the right to any opinion you want. You do not have the right to hurt people. You don't have the right to steal from them. You don't have the right to defraud people. But you certainly, foremost, have the right to any opinion you want, no matter what the people in charge think of it. In fact, you have that right as a bulwark against tyranny by the people in charge. Like, that's the only thing that keeps this country free, is my right to have any opinion I want. And this guy is going to jail for his opinions. And, you know, it's so crazy that I kept thinking, like, is there something that I'm missing? Like, it does seem a little fringe, this group. I'd never heard of them. I'm not saying they're money, okay? They must have done something. No, nothing. And you should see the video of the FBI raid. It's unbelievable. They sent like, it's on the internet. It's on X. I have the video on there. They sent like 40 armed agents with automatic weapons to this guy's office and his house. Like, no exaggeration. It was a full-blown, like, we're arresting El Chapo type thing. For this guy, he's like an 83-year-old Army veteran. It's outrageous. And I really find it baffling that nobody who's like against woke culture or whatever will touch it. And the reason they won't touch it is because their foreign policy views in general are more important to them than their views on speech and the First Amendment, their views on America.
Well, if you step out of line, right, so the ideology is that we must support Ukraine. Right. So this is, Russia has a point. This is what they're saying. So Russia was very upset about the movement of the weapons closer to their borders, the joining NATO, all the stuff that was the hard red lines that Putin had already set. Like, if Russia would definitely do something if Ukraine joined NATO. We all knew that. So if you deviate from that, you're going to be in trouble. So better just ignore it. Because you can't, you clearly, if you look at who these people are, I mean, these are people that would be supported by the left wholeheartedly.
Well, they are. I mean, it's like the revolutionary socialist.
Yeah,
they're not at CPAC this year.
But the left has to ignore it, because then
100%.
It conflicts with this
the
other
categories
part of
right
the
and left
ideology.
are just like, now they're actually ridiculous.
They're
like,
ridiculous.
They don't mean
They're
anything.
ridiculous.
In fact, we've moved past the point where they don't mean anything. They do mean something. They are propaganda instruments designed to cloak the truth from the rest of us. That in fact there's agreement, not disagreement, at the center of power. They all agree on the things that matter. And those are the economy and foreign policy, because that's where the money is. There's no effort to, say, rein in the credit card companies, which, if you really cared about the country, you'd say, but people are really suffering. Okay, they don't have enough money to live. Kids can't, not only not buy houses, they can't afford rent. And why is that? And one of the main reasons is because they're paying like close to 20% interest on their credit cards. And okay, we just imagine that in a free market that's a good thing. Tell me why that's a good thing. Who benefits from that? Why are we for that again? I'm not for that. I think the credit card companies are villains. And they send credit cards to kids at school and get them hooked on this. I think it's totally wrong. And if you said that in the US Congress, people look at you like you had three heads. Like, what? They just don't care, because they all agree that our current economic system and our current foreign policy assumptions are good. So that's not a two-party system, that's a one-party system, and it doesn't serve the interest of the country. And my position is super simple. The only country I have an emotional attachment to is the United States. That's it. I like lots of countries. I like almost all countries, actually. I've been to a lot of them. I like them all. But the only one I feel emotional about is the United States, because I live here. I was born here. My kids are here. It's my country. And most of the people in our foreign policy conversation do not feel that way. So that distorts it really dramatically. And they're also, a lot of them are violence worshipers. Like, they get off on war. They get off on hurting people and on the power that imbues them with. And I think, the Liz Cheney model, you know what I mean? Like, someone like Liz Cheney, who's got like a really sad and barren personal life, a lot of them are this way. Weird personal life, failed personal life. Like, they don't have people who love them. They don't have kids who respect them. And so Adam Kinzinger or whatever, they're all kind of the same. The more broken they are inside, the more focused they are on like war and foreign policy, because it gives them a feeling of power and strength and success. Like, I can't get my wife to respect me, I can't get my kids to listen to me, I can't pass any meaningful domestic agenda, but what I can do is bomb the living shit out of a foreign country. And so there is this, it's not true for all of them, but for a lot of them there is this syndrome that drives their behavior. But whatever the reason, it's totally disconnected from what's good for the country. And if you run America, you have one job, and that's improve America, period. They don't see it that way. And so I don't think the system can continue because it's too distorted. It's not serving its original purpose at all.
So what was it that these guys said that made this raid possible?
They said Russia, and I don't want to speak for them, like I interviewed anyone who wants to see it can interview, and I just want to say again, like,
this raid possible, man. They'll raid whoever the fuck they want to raid.
Stuff happening, I know that you probably experience it all the time. It's like finding not only common ground with people you thought you had nothing in common with at all, but also like liking them. You know, like I actually liked the guy. I'm sure we disagree on a million things. Probably mad at white people. I am a white person, whatever. But like in my conversation, I was like, I like this guy. You know, he's honest and he's sincere. He's principled. He's a veteran. You know, whatever. No, I really think what they said was what I have said, and a lot of people have said, which is there was a reason for this invasion. I personally think the invasion was a bad idea. It didn't help anybody. I'm against war. I'm sad the war's ongoing. But they were pushed to this by a more powerful country, which would be the United States of America, with the threat of including Ukraine in NATO. It's really simple. And right before the invasion, days before the invasion, they send poor Kamala Harris, who has no idea what day it is, to the Munich Security Conference, an area she knows nothing about, no experience in it at all, and they send her there for one purpose, which is to announce at a press briefing, with all the cameras rolling, to Zelensky, right there, she says, "We want you to join NATO." What? No other NATO members were clamoring for Ukraine. It didn't even qualify for NATO membership. Why would you say that? When Putin's got troops massed on the Ukrainian border, you send your vice president to the Munich Security Conference with the world watching and say this that no one even really wants? Why would you do that? To provoke war. Obviously, what's the other reason? And it was scripted. Like, Kamala Harris is not freeballing stuff. Like, she's saying what she's told to say. Obviously. It's not her area. She doesn't know anything about this stuff. She was told to say that. But why? To provoke a war. Obviously. So that was my read. I said that on Fox News. Not a lot of people liked it, but it just seemed obvious to me. I'm not making excuses for Putin. Please. I want to protect the United States, and I think this war really hurts the United States. Like, my motives are always right out there. Anyway, I think they said a species of that, something like that. And the last thing I'll say is that why was the reaction so strong? Because it was true. They don't care if you lie. No one in power cares if you lie.
But a lot of people
they only care when you tell the truth.
A lot of people are saying those things, and they're not getting arrested.
Because he's like some black nationalist guy in St. Petersburg. Like, who cares? We can do. Who's going to defend him? Nobody. He's some wacko. He's some like 80-year-old guy who's like been in the like fringe left movement for the past 50 years. You know, like new Huey Newton and Stokely Carmichael. He's like a relic of the past. And like, he doesn't have a constituency. He doesn't care. The modern Democratic Party hates him. He hates them. And the Republican Party is like, black nationalism? No thanks. So he has no constituency. They're never gonna, like, you could say that, and what are they gonna do to you? You know, nothing, because they can't. But this guy, yeah, crush him, kill him. And that's exactly what they're doing. And I really think, not to be like a 70s liberal about it, if you let the weak get crushed, it's bad. It's super bad. You need to protect the weak, and this guy's weak.
And so you think they're making an example out of him with this?
And they can. They have all this power.
I just don't understand why they would move so many people, why they would get so many agents, why they would do this so publicly for one guy's opinion or one group of people's opinion.
Well, I don't know. I mean, why did medieval kings hang the heads of people they executed from the gates?
Right, but it feels like there should be more to it. Like, what did they say? So the problem
you're telling me.
I know. The problem is that, I mean, I'm steel manning this rather. So the problem is that they went over to Russia and they talked with people in Russia, and then they're saying these things. Is that the problem?
They're not charged with that. They're not charged with going to Russia.
But do you think that's the motivation behind it, because they went over there? Okay.
Yeah, they are not, at least when I interviewed them, they had not been charged with taking money from Russia.
So it says they've been accused of us, they've accused us of taking money from Russia. Yeshitela said yesterday at a news conference on July 29th, we've never taken any money from the Russian government, but I'm not saying that because I'm morally opposed to taking money from the Russians or anyone else who wants to support the struggles for black people. Don't tell us that we can't have friends that you don't like. He accused the U.S. government of seeking to use the APSP as a pawn in its proxy war with Russia, the unsubstantiated allegation that opponents of the war are co-conspirators with a foreign power are intended to bolster the phantom of a Russian boogeyman in the public consciousness. The escalating military aggression by the U.S. against Russia and China is already being accompanied by increasing repression and an attempt to criminalize left-wing opposition to the unpopular war. Well, exactly. So they're accusing him of taking money from Russia.
They're not. They're not charging him. So here's the distinction, which is like really, really important. So there are two levels on which the Department of Justice and all administrations acts. There's the level of propaganda, like what do we want people to think, and there's the level of law. What are we charging someone with? You have to ignore the first and pay very close attention to the second. So we have a legal system, we have laws, and you can't actually go to jail unless you violate one under the terms of our system. And so ignore what they're saying about you. Joe Rogan sucks, he's a bad man. But in the end, I'm busting you for double parking. And so you're not a bad man, you're a double parker under the law. And so if you look at the charges against these guys, they're not charged with violating sanctions regulations. They are charged with totally amorphous, quote, crimes like defrauding the U.S. government, not for money, but for like defrauding it, like I guess counter signaling it, sending a message publicly that they don't like. I mean, there's no crime. Look it up, except speaking. And I think that's a precedent that we don't want to live with.
No doubt.
What's that, Joe looking at him? Joe like, what? You must be a hot man. How you getting away with saying this?
We're a cyber.
See how Joe looking at his ass, looking like?
Yeah, let's take a leak. We'll be right back. We're gonna pee.
Yeah, he's like, man, I gotta go. I gotta talk to him, man. We gotta take a break on this one. Tucker. Boy, who planted you? How are you allowed to say these things? They revealing their truths. And y'all overlooking them. I'm calling 12,000, boy. We in this shit, boy. I hope you got the ace hard in your punk ass hand. Ain't no more hard coming, boy. You gonna come, you gonna look at ace of heart. Dang, so we had to take a break on this one.
Tucker and I are gonna pee.
They had a break. I'm gonna take a break too. Check on my dog shit. Okay, we back, man.
Yeah, well, that's the confronting of reality. You're forced to examine your beliefs and why you came to those beliefs in the first place.
No, that is the beauty of this moment, though.
It is.
People are living intentionally much more, and it's also just much more interesting. It's not just, it's less shallow than it was for sure.
I think so. I think it's more nuanced. People have more at least the people that are paying attention have a more nuanced perspective. But then you have the people that are in the echo chambers that are just digging their heels in even more. And you could spot them easily because
they're missing out because there's nothing more liberating than admitting you were wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that is like the moment of liberation.
Right.
And that's the basis of religion, it's the basis of AA, it's the basis of anything that improves you as a person, is honestly admitting to other people, not just to yourself, that like, wow, I got that wrong.
Yeah.
And then
It's
you're
very
free,
important.
because then you don't have to hide it anymore.
Right. Very important.
And it's
Yeah.
a beautiful thing, and that is, like, changing your mind. I always notice this covering politics, that, a candidate would be like, I've got him on tape saying 10 years ago something different. And no one ever asked my opinion, but I always wanted to say, why don't you say, you're absolutely right, and the country's a lot different from what it was 10 years ago, and so my opinions changed too. Like, why wouldn't they? Because I'm not a freaking robot or a liar.
Also, I used to think this because of that, and now I realize I was wrong.
Exactly.
Yeah, which
How
is
great
fine.
is that?
Yeah.
I mean,
it's part of being a human. It's not being a flip-flopper.
It's the best part.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Well,
agree
this
with
is an
that.
interesting time for that, because you see people that won't do that. And you could recognize them easily because they're the first people to throw out insults. The first thing to do is to describe you, they'll describe you in an insulting way, and then they'll say what they disagree with you about. They'll say something hard, they try to define you, you're far right, white supremacist, racist,
Oh, been
misogynist.
there.
Yeah, they throw it all at you, and then they say what you said.
It's so funny. I got called racist and white supremacist so many times, but when I first was called that, I mean, it really stung, a lot, because just of where I grew up and how I grew up, and those are like the worst things you could ever call somebody. And so I actually paused for a moment and thought, am I? Which I think it's fair to ask yourself, am I a white, whatever that, I never figured out what that was. Am I a racist? Not really. And I thought, really, the people I dislike most are almost all white liberals, actually. So
You're racist against white people.
No, but I am white. My kids are white. I'm not against white people. I like white people. But no, it's not that. It's that. So a reporter once called me about this. Oh, you've been called racist. Like, no, actually, I really dislike you. If I were sort of narrowed down my bigotries, it's like people like you. I just think you're disgusting. I really mean it too. Racist. Okay.
All right. Well, it's
Our
a
queen's no
it's
good
a
with
thing,
it, would.
I don't think that works as much.
gotta
It
live
doesn't
with
work.
the same hand.
No. Well, I think
You
a lot
find
of
a way.
things that you overuse, eventually people realize, like, oh, you're yelling wolf again. Yeah.
Well, of course. And when people get hit with it and don't disappear, then it becomes obvious that it lacks power.
Well, it's also you're trying to use these words to define someone, especially someone like you that has so many hours and hours of talking about things. Like to try this reductionist perspective of someone, to reduce them to this ultimately very negative thing, and not say that they're a human being. And also the fact that it's done by the people that want to think of themselves as compassionate and kind, which is the most bizarre. The left is so aggressively incompassionate. Like they're
That's
so
for sure.
aggressively unkind with
Letting people die of drug ODs on the sidewalk, that's compassion? No, it's
that
not.
whole thing is fucking crazy.
Well, it's cruelty, actually.
It is, and it's
We got
also when you find
47, nobody.
Colion Noirs.
I got
I know him.
Yeah, great guy. He
Hold
opened my eyes to the homelessness thing.
Papa.
We were on a podcast, and he was
Not
explaining
the
homelessness
mic.
in San Francisco, and he was like, "What is this?
Hold
Is this how it is?" Like, no, there's a whole business behind it.
Hold
And these people that are running this homelessness initiative or whatever the fuck they call it, they're making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. Some of them $250,000 a year,
Imagine making money off the homeless.
and not doing a goddamn thing.
But what's so funny is I do think the root of their power and the one thing they're good at is just charging the moral high ground and taking it in the first moments of the battle.
Yeah.
They just run up to the moral high ground and are
Yeah.
like, we've got this is ours, and they'll protect that at all costs. And it's like, that's kind of all they have is this self-righteousness. And if you can puncture that, it's like, you're getting rich from the homeless, actually.
Yeah.
And is there anything more
Dog right
disgusting
there,
than
like,
that?
you ain't
Some
ready to
junkie
play with
dying
me.
in misery
You ain't
outside the
exercise.
convention center in San Francisco. And
You
you're
ain't
making
worked
money on
that
it.
Essentially using those
day.
people as a battery to expand the power of government.
Yeah, and
Because-
their own personal advantage.
Yeah, they're expanding government. They're making more government employees. Now there's tons of people that are working on the homelessness problem, air quotes, and they probably all have blue hair and they talk nonsense, and nothing's getting done, and no one's being punished for it. But when they did that study where they said that they had no data, like how are you? What? You can't say whether or not it's doing anything. How'd you spend $24 billion?
But why are they not treated as like the most reprehensible people in our society?
I think there's too many things to think about.
Yeah.
And I think most people, unlike you and I, aren't even paying attention to it. They're paying attention to the fact that the tents are there. They're paying attention if you go to Los Angeles, it's a fucking zombie apocalypse. But what they're not paying attention to is what is going on. How many people are making money? I don't even know if Napoleon explained it to us.
Yeah.
I had no idea. I thought it was just they don't have any money. They don't put any money in it. And they let these people sleep there. No, there's actual
They're all
money.
these parasites.
Yeah, parasites. Government parasites.
Of course.
And, you know, this whole idea of, I've created so many jobs. Like, what jobs? Are they government jobs that are just bullshit? Because there's a lot of those.
What's crazy to me, just having spent most of my life in Washington, is how close this is to the lawmakers physically. So the U.S. Capitol sits across from something called Union Station, which is a really beautiful train station, right on Capitol Hill. And so to get into the Capitol, when there's a massive homeless city there, people dying of drug ODs right there. And so to get to work every day, lawmakers have to like step over the bodies of fellow Americans dying, living outdoors, shitting in the bushes, addicted to drugs, which is hell, okay? And they have to ignore that on their way to creating utopia in some foreign country. And you're like, does it ever occur to you that that's disgusting? That your primary duty is to the drug addict, your fellow American, you're doing nothing? And you're telling me how we're gonna make Eastern Europe into, you know, this brave new world? I don't know. I just can't get past that. I think I'm not super sensitive or aware or anything. I'm not super anything, really. I'm pretty ordinary, but I think I would notice. So it's like walking into vote in Ukraine aid, I'd be like, shit, there are like 5 junkies on the street. Like, maybe we should do something for them? No.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very bizarre. It's bizarre that they can rationalize it, or at least that they don't get called out by all their people. And this idea that it's compassionate, you have compassion to lead these people and to give them aid, to help them and give them clean needles.
But then you've got to think, like, maybe there's something bigger going on, actually. Because there's there's an entire sector of the economy now that feeds off of human misery. The drug treatment centers that don't work, the homeless advocates who create more homeless, the, migrant workers, American-born aid agencies, workers who, increase illegal immigration and gang activity. There's all this, people are making money off this, the arms manufacturers that help kill people in foreign countries, et cetera, et cetera. There's a VIG and all of that. It's a scam, it's a grift, et cetera, et cetera. But, there's something more. There are a lot of people who seem to be just, for evil for its own sake. And you're like, maybe all the, crazy talk about a spiritual war of, good and evil, maybe there's something to that. Maybe that's not an illusion. Maybe that's, everyone else has always thought that. Maybe.
There are certainly forces that have evil consequences that exist.
But they act on people from the outside. And you feel it also on the other side. I mean, people are better than they naturally are sometimes. You feel compassion for people or true empathy for someone, or you really want to help someone. There's no advantage to you at all. Why are you doing that? It's almost like you're being acted on by good. And all of us have known those moments where we just are cruel for the sake of it, hurt someone for the sake of it. What's that? There's no advantage to us. That's evil acting on us. And I think we're seeing it at scale. And I grew up in the most secular world you could ever grow up in. Southern California in the 70s and 80s, and in a very secular family, and I've never really paid much attention to that. And all of a sudden, not everyone, a lot of people I know who had similar childhoods to mine, similar life experiences, are like, maybe there is a supernatural realm. Maybe there's more than just what we can see and feel. Maybe life is more than just ordering shit on Amazon. Maybe there's a purpose. Maybe there is this battle between good and evil around us that we can't see, but that we do experience a lot.
It seems like it's always been a narrative throughout human history. It's always been this recognition. Carl's over there snoring. I don't have my headphones on so I can hear him.
You're snorting or snoring?
Snoring. Carl's snoring. Carl the dog.
Carl the dog!
Carl the dog.
He snores. Carl the dog.
Oh, he's the best, but he snores when he sleeps because he's a little French bulldog.
He's a sporty little bulldog.
He's awesome.
Yeah.
He's the best. Dogs don't get cuter. They might be as cute, but they don't get any cuter than Carl.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
I've got some pretty good looking dogs.
Yeah, I have a beautiful dog. I have a golden retriever, but he's not as cute as Carl. Carl's a different thing.
Don't tell him that.
He knows. He doesn't like Carl. Well, he doesn't hate Carl, but he like ignores him. He thinks of Carl as a thief of attention only.
Which he is.
Yeah.
Fair.
So, human beings have always at least believed that there are forces of good and evil, and that that's what exorcisms are about, right? The idea that you're possessed.
Yes.
That you're possessed by evil. There's always been this thought that there's good and evil. But when did you start considering that and thinking that that's because weren't you at one point in time weren't you a Grateful Dead head?
Oh yeah. I listened to him this morning. Yeah.
You used to travel around with them?
Yeah.
How old were you when that was going on?
I went to my first Dead show in December of...
Your first who?
1984, so I was 15 at, speaking of the San Francisco Civic
15?
Center. Yeah,
Wow.
the New Year's shows, so they've always played in Oakland, but one year they played at the in San Francisco.
The who show?
And so we were in Tahoe over Christmas, and for some reason my dad was gone, I don't really know where, so my brother and I drove illegally from Tahoe in the family vehicle to downtown San Francisco.
How old was your brother?
13.
So you drove? Or
Yeah,
he drove?
I drove.
15, you drove?
Yeah.
Wow.
From Tahoe, so it was a couple hours. And I remember being on the freeway, I'm like,
at 15.
Well, we had a pretty different kind of childhood. But anyway, we just
Is that you?
Yeah, it's me on the left.
Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how that picture is hanging in my barn, and I've never, I don't release any pictures of myself or family or anything like that. And somebody came to my barn and took a picture that's hanging next to my sink, and put it on the internet.
Wow.
So that's my brother Buckley on the right. That picture was taken. So my dad was a reporter in San Francisco in the '60s, and pretty well-known reporter, and that was in the '80s when I was in school, and we were home for Christmas vacation, and he had covered the Grateful Dead. He knew the Grateful Dead. My dad did. So they were
looked a
in his
pretty
office.
good
They
life
came
to
to
me,
DC,
buddy.
and they called him, and they came over to his office. Jerry came over to his office, and my dad's like, "I've got Jerry Garcia here. You guys should come down." So my brother and I, we lived in Georgetown, and we had a Vespa. Remember those?
Yeah.
And we drove our Vespa. It was freaking cold out. I'll never forget that. We drove our Vespa down to 6th and E or whatever, where my dad's office was, and there was Jerry. I'd never met him before. He was missing the middle finger of his right hand, famously. The famous handprint, Grateful Dead handprint. But when he shook his hand, you could feel it collapse, kind of, because he didn't have that middle finger. But anyway, so my brother and I drove to the New Year's show. It was actually a couple nights before New Year's, and we didn't have tickets, of course. And we were in the park across from there, and we were, doing the, whatever things that people do at Dead shows, and we were pretty freaking out of it. And this guy comes up out of nowhere and puts a ticket around my face and goes, "Here," and hands me a ticket. So my brother was extremely out of it. I mean, he was, I never should have done this, but I was like, "All right, man, I'm going in." All right, and I left my little brother in the park during the show, just very, very impaired, super, super impaired. It was completely wrong to do something like that, but I did do it. And then I went in and saw the show. Kind of freaked out in the middle of it. Hid in the men's room for a while. Never forget that. Standing on the stall smoking cigarettes.
Is it acid?
Smoking cigarettes. What you mean, boy? Got one of my
By the way, I should just say, I got sober 22 years ago. I'm completely opposed to anything like. I don't take Advil. I'm totally opposed to anything, but other than nicotine and coffee. But yeah, it was mushrooms. So we ate way too many, and started to kind of melt down a little bit. But anyway, the point is, I get out of the show. This is pre-cell phone. This is 1984, and I get out of the show, and they played actually a lot of tunes that they didn't play. They played Spoonful. They didn't play Spoonful a lot. It was a pretty obscure tune. I'd never heard it before, actually. And I couldn't find my brother, my little brother. And I'm in charge, and my closest friend and lifelong friends. Talked to him this morning, and but I couldn't find him. And I was like, "Oh man." My brother's gone. But there he was. He appeared an hour later. He had spent the entire show in somebody's van parked there. But he seemed undamaged, and it was great. I mean, not everything about it is great. I mean, I do think the drug thing got, definitely hurt people for sure. But from my perspective, I went to a bunch, probably 50 or more shows, and really enjoyed it. And I love the fact that they had 2 drummers. That was a huge thing for me. I love rhythm. I think it's the basis of music. It's obviously the basis of music. I mean, instruments are cool, but they're kind of like interior design, and the architecture is rhythm, and it's the universal sound that every culture appreciates because it reflects something that's pre-existing, that's in you. Everyone relates to rhythm, and I just absolutely loved the drums. And they would always play, like it was called drums actually, but they would play a section of every show. It was just drums. Bill Kreutzmann and Mickey Hart just gone crazy on the drums. They had drum circles, and I just like drums. To this day, I listen to drums, just percussion. King Sunny Ade, the great West African drummer, and anyway, whatever. So yeah, I like the Grateful Dead a lot, and still do. And I like that kind of music.
Jam music?
I like jam music. I like acoustic music. I love bluegrass and Americana. And to see that grow, to see Billy Strings become like a venue packer, like Billy Strings is like a big act right now. I do feel like art has been completely destroyed and eliminated in the United States. There's like, as we were saying earlier, you can't be creative if you're not honest. It's that simple, and we can't be honest, so there's no creativity. And in the visual arts and literature and architecture, it's died. But comedy is still alive, thank heaven, and music, for some reason, has escaped that and is still alive.
Yeah.
And the growth, the explosion of acoustic bluegrass and the banjo, like one of the great instruments ever, is just thrilling and like a sign of life. At this late stage.
Well, I think when there's social pressures and when society's in chaos, art does tend to thrive. Some kind of art.
Some art, that's right.
Comedy certainly does now. Like, comedy's never been better.
But it came
an amazing
close.
time.
It came close.
Oh yeah, yeah. The walls got breached.
Whoa.
Yeah.
No, but a few years, I don't know when it was, but 8 years ago or something, it felt like, oh wow, people can't tell jokes anymore.
We kept doing it.
Well, I noticed.
Yeah.
And
yeah, we kept doing it.
You kept the little embers alive.
Yeah. Well, it was flames. It's just when you get people in a club and you take their phones away and just have them just be actual human beings and not be filming everything, right. Just being completely trapped with this idea of capturing something and then putting it online, then you get to have a human experience.
You mean when people live in the present
yeah.
rather than in the future or far away?
That's one of the great things
through a
about
data line?
Going to a good club that uses yonder bags for your phones. Is that it just takes you out of it, at the very least, it's a break. Like this podcast is a break for 3 hours of phones. There's no one's checking phones.
I love that.
That's very rare with human beings, where they can just sit down and just have conversations for long periods of time without being distracted by something.
Not in my house, but yeah.
It's a real problem with folks.
It's a huge problem. And the one thing I will say about my very unconventional childhood is there was a huge premium on meals and eating with people, and spending 4 hours at the table was totally normal in the house that I grew up in. Totally normal. In fact, it was daily. And that was our primary form of entertainment and mode of communication, and thing that we did for fulfillment and fun. And I still do that. I still feel that way. And we have dinner parties constantly, and there are no phones, and people talk and entertain each other, and it's so much more interesting. I'm not on social media, but if I were on social media, I don't think I would find that on Instagram. And I'm not attacking Instagram, but I don't think I would find anything like that.
No, it's definitely a lost thing. And
it's such an easy thing. It's such a fun thing.
It is a fun thing. Yeah, it's a great thing, and I think people enjoy it. I think that's also led to the rise of podcasts too, because they don't get that in their real life. So at least they get to be a person who sits in on these conversations.
I gotta say, this is not being suck-uppy, because I don't suck up ever to anyone, but the effect that podcasts have had is just incredible, and I never would have predicted that.
I wouldn't have
million freaking years.
I would have never thought it. when I first started doing this, it was in my living room with my friend Brian, and we did it on a laptop. We had a webcam, and we were like...
With my friend Brian.
Yeah. Brian Redband of Kill Tony. You met Brian.
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
But I just love the phrase, with my friend Brian. Like every bad story, like, I was
and
with my friend Brian. we were
what
down
we
in Mexicali, and me and my friend Brian.
We just started fucking around online, and then we started eventually bringing in guests, and then we eventually got a studio, and then eventually I got, a big place in LA, like a real warehouse, and then eventually moved to Texas. It all just eventually happened.
But it was not. I mean, I was in another part of media for that whole period, and if you had asked me up until the last few years, like the future was clearly shorter.
No ways and get them.
CRISPR.
No ways and get them. No ways and get them.
Right.
No ways and get them.
Exactly. Everyone did think
no ways and get them.
And I hated it.
I
hated it.
No ways and get them. No ways and get them. Oh, he had $1 on him. Let me get that $1 out there.
I thought that was over.
He had $1 on you.
Not
Let me
over.
get that out there.
Everybody thought that. Yeah. Even my friends, they were telling me how to edit the show. Like, you should edit that. Nobody's gonna listen to it. Like, don't listen. I don't care. Do whatever you want. I'm not making any money doing this. It was just for fun.
I love that.
It was just fun for years. For years and years. I did it just with no money. There was no money in it forever.
What year, like how many years in did it start to pay for itself?
5.
That's a long time.
Yeah, long time. It took a while. I mean, it was probably like existing. Yeah, but about 5 years in, then it started making money. And then it was like, oh, this is a business. I remember very clearly, I was on stage once in Chicago. I was doing the Chicago Theater. And I had this story that I was going to tell. I'm like, how many people listen to the podcast? And there's 3,700 people in the place. And they went nuts. It was like, yeah. I was like, oh. Like, I thought there was this like thing that I'm doing where, a few people are paying attention. I don't even know back then, I never even knew what the numbers were. I didn't even care.
Well, they may not have been, like, could you even collect numbers accurately?
Yeah, you could get downloads off of, whatever the provider was that was, or the host. You could get, like, download numbers from the host. And they would use that to inform ads. Like, oh, he gets X amount of downloads per month. And then they would, that's when there was very few people advertising on podcasts. They would, all right, let's give it a try.
But it's one of the great developments between podcasting and Billy Strings. Like I'm serious, I have hope that it's not all going in the wrong direction, because you can get this view that like everything is falling apart, late Rome, just a matter of time before it really does collapse. And then you see these signs that are not minor, they're significant. That like, no, people, I mean, I haven't met a person in the past year who said, I thought this, but then I was reading the New York Times and I realized I was wrong. Like, not one person.
Right.
But the number of people say, I was listening to this podcast, I was listening to Rogan and da-da-da-da. It's like, really noticeable.
Yeah, that's why it's interesting. It's interesting because you could put people in front of people, and they might not even be right. They might be wrong. But at least now you're having conversations about something you would never have a conversation about before. And even if this person gets exposed as being incorrect, well, now you have a more nuanced understanding of what the subject is about and why people think incorrect things. And, this idea of like platforming people is a big one today. Why would you platform that person?
First of all,
why would you de-platform?
And whenever they take a perfectly good noun and turn it into a verb, something bad is afoot.
Yeah.
Okay? Platform. Oh, you mean letting an adult human being talk?
Right.
I think that's not only allowed, I think that's the law.
Not only that, for us, it's even important to talk to people that
are law world
completely different than you, that don't agree with you at all.
Well, it's especially important.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just masturbatory.
It's interesting.
It's just you alone getting yourself off.
But it's also interesting to know why these people think the way they think, and also there's so many people that if you talk to them online, you'd have these horrible conversations. But if you sit down with them as an actual human being and treat them with respect and consideration, you talk to them like a human being, and you just try to be as friendly and open as possible.
That's what Tucker was talking about, having the dinners.
What your differences might be. You realize most people have a lot in common. A lot. Way more in common than they don't.
But that's the secret that they're trying to hide.
Yeah.
So mind control, the end stage of mind control is censorship, right? But it begins long before that. And it begins by creating false categories that wall off your willingness, that prevent you from wanting to know certain things or talk to certain people. And name calling is the most obvious tool. He's a crank, he's a racist, he's a whatever. You fill it in. And then you're like, I can't listen to that person. And I have to say, your willingness to platform or to have a conversation with Alex Jones, I think was a revolutionary act, actually. Not that everything Alex Jones says is right. It's not. Not everything I say is right or anyone says is right. But Alex Jones is an interesting person. And even if he's not interesting, he has been walled off from the rest of us through name calling. And your willingness to be like, no, actually, we're just going to listen to Alex Jones and you can decide for yourself.
Well, Alex has been my friend for more than 20 years.
Well, exactly. But
let's say he was dead.
Even if he just but I'm sure you have other friends you haven't invited. Just like you were not allowed to talk to him. And when you hear Alex Jones talk, you may not agree with everything he says. So what? I know that I do. But you definitely understand why they told you couldn't listen to Alex Jones.
Well, that's one of the reasons why I had him as one of the first guests when I came over to Spotify.
Love that.
I was like, let's go.
What did they say?
Well, a lot of people weren't happy. We lost sponsors. It was an issue. But I think it did the job. Regardless of what he said that's incorrect, clearly the Sandy Hook thing was incorrect. Alex, I know Alex personally, so I know what he was going through. And, everybody wants to talk about mental health and they want to praise people for being honest about their mental health issues and support them on their mental health journey to wellness. Alex has gone through some real issues, and one of the reasons why he's gone through some issues is because that guy is uncovering real shit that's terrifying every fucking day. And he was drinking out of control, and he's just fucking constantly stressed, freaking out. And when you see so many lies and so much propaganda and so many psyops that are being done on people, you start seeing them where they don't exist. And that's what he did.
Well, and he's also channeling some stuff. You can't call 9/11 in detail because you're super informed.
Before the fact.
He called it.
Yes.
He literally called it in the summer of 2001. He said planes will fly into the World Trade Centers and they will blame a man called Osama bin Laden. We know that he said that because he said it on tape multiple times. And then he said, call the White House and tell them this. Now, that's all we know about Alex Jones. Let's just say that's the fact set. How'd that happen?
Right, how did he do that?
No, he's channeling something.
You think
that's
so?
super, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
There's no other, tell me how he did it otherwise. I asked him about it. How did you do that? At length, at dinner in my barn recently, we were talking about this. How'd you do that? I don't know. It just came to me. And that's real. That is real. The supernatural is real. And I don't know why it's so hard for the modern mind, I guess because it's a materialist mind, to accept that. But and that's not a new phenomenon. It's happened throughout history. There are people called prophets. And there are people who were prophets who weren't called prophets, but there are people who have information or parts of information, bits of information, visions of information come to them, and then they relay it. It's not from them. They received it. This is like one of the oldest phenomena in human history. So
all knowledge is in the fabric of the universe. Consciousness access.
Crazy, a little unbalanced, a little different from everybody else. Do you know what I mean? They live on locusts and honey in the wilderness. That's just they're not like everybody else. And that's clearly part of what, I'm not saying that everything that Alex Jones says is a prophecy from God. It's not. But that was prophetic. And if it wasn't, tell me how it wasn't. In July of 2000, I lived in Washington in July of 2001. My dad worked in the government. I was as well informed as anybody could be about what was going on in the government. I've always been interested in what's happening in other countries. I was aware of Osama bin Laden. I knew about the Taliban. I knew more than most people. There's not one person who was saying, not one person in Washington, D.C. was saying, at some point soon, they may fly airplanes into the World Trade Centers and blame Osama bin Laden. That just wasn't a thing. So if you said that multiple times on camera, there's a reason. And everyone, I've said this to 50 people, what I just said to
I can think of plenty of other reasons, though.
Yeah, that's stupid. Tell me how it's stupid. And tell me how he did that. Like that's impossible.
He was a
He didn't
plant,
just do it
a
with
part
that.
of the government
No,
that had
he's done
already
it.
planned
He's
to
done it
do
with
it.
a lot of things, and that's one of the more interesting
How about
things
that?
about him is that like he
That's
he
more
talks
li-
about
that's
stuff.
more
Like,
likely
he talked
than
about like I'm gonna send
a spirit
this
channeling through him.
because this is one of the really crazy ones that he called, and this is like 2000 probably I guess 2017. Let me find this. Give me a second, yeah. I'll find because I sent it to him like, how the fuck did you call this? Because it's one of those ones where you're like, this is exactly what's happening now. Here it is. Here, 2017. Hold on a second. I'll send you this channel.
Bad thing. I could got a bit of rinse.
Alright, I sent it to you, Jenny. So this is some guy's Instagram clip that I found. They took a clip from the podcast and he's doing commentary. I'll put these on real quick. Yeah. Okay.
Let's see what y'all talking about, bro.
Here we go.
22 years on podcasts, InfoWars, Alex Jones, and Joe Rogan discuss what's currently happening right now at Google, CERN, technology, vampire, aliens. In a nutshell, Alex is pretty on point with this message. Let me know what your thoughts are. Is he crazy or is he on something?
It's really big. So, okay. Yeah, pour another shot of that. Media. Let's get this out properly. All right, let me give you my best of please. Deep research approximation once again. What do you think is going, but am I wrong to still hold out hope that aliens are real? Because I tell you, as the two guilty pleasures that I still cling to is Bigfoot and aliens. Those are two. Bigfoot not so much. I wish it was real, but I just don't. Are you ready? Yes. Bigfoot's real? No. Come on, Daddy. No. Are you ready? Yes. I'm gonna use the biggest one. Joe, there are aliens in this room right now. For real? Yeah, you're not of this world, bro. Me? You're the alien. Oh, wow, I didn't know. Well, here's what the elite believe. And let me take this out of context.
Hold on. Y'all want us to believe that, right? In your own Bible, it says y'all are aliens. And I'm going to show you that right here.
I only go with what I can prove. Oh, thank you. And people can't even handle that. There's armies. We're fighting a pedophile conspiracy, but beyond that, it's a vampire conspiracy in that they are interdimensionally sucking the essence of our youth. Right. And they believe they're possessed by an off-world entity. They do? Yeah, and Joe, I've been on air 22 years. I don't get into aliens, metaphysical, religion, any of that. I've studied the elite, and I've also communicated with a lot of the top people. And if you want to know, I will actually break down right now the best knowledge right now what's happening on the planet. What's happening? The elite are all about transcendence and living forever and the secrets of the universe, and they want to know all this. Some are good, some are bad, some are a mix. But the good ones don't ever want to organize. The bad ones didn't want to organize because they lust after power. Powerful consciousnesses don't want to dominate other people. They want to empower them, so they don't tend to get together until things are really late in the game. Then they come together. Evil's always defeated because good is so much stronger. And we're on this planet, and Einstein's physics showed it, Max Planck's physics showed it, there's at least 12 dimensions. And now that's why all the top scientists and billionaires are coming out saying it's a false hologram. It is artificial. The computers are scanning it and finding.
That's fake. They want you to believe in this fake matrix.
Tension points where it's artificially projected and gravity's bleeding in to this universe. That's what they call dark matter. So we're like a thought or a dream that's a wisp in some computer program, some God's mind, whatever. They're proving it all. It's all coming out. Now, there's like this sub-transmission zone below the third dimension. It's just turned over to those Marvel things where it resonates to. And it's trying to get up into the third dimension. It's just a basic level consciousness to launch into the next levels. And our species is already way up at the fifth, sixth dimension consciously, our best people. But there's this big war trying to like basically destroy humanity because humanity has free will and there's a decision to which level we want to go to. We have free will, so evil's allowed to come and contend, and not just good. And the elites themselves believe they're racing using human technology to try to take our best minds and build some type of breakaway civilization where they're going to merge with machines, transcend, and break away from the failed species that is man, which is kind of like a false transmission because they're thinking what they are is ugly and bad, projecting it onto themselves instead of believing, no, it's a human test about building us up. And so Google was set up 18, 19 years ago. This was,
Okay, see, they're going to build that fake matrix and try to escape their minds and download their consciousness so they can escape death because they sold their souls and they don't want to die now.
I knew about this before it was declassified. I'm just saying I have good sources. That they wanted to build a giant artificial system. And Google believes that the first artificial intelligence will be a supercomputer based on the neuron activities of the hive mind of humanity with billions of people wired into it with the Internet of Things. And so all of our thoughts go into it, and we're actually building a computer that has real neurons in real time that's also psychically connected to us, that are organic creatures, so that they will have current prediction powers, future prediction powers, a true crystal ball. But the big secret is, once you have a crystal ball and know the future, you can add stimuli beforehand and make decisions that control the future. And so then it's the end of consciousness and free will for individuals, as we know, and a true 2.0 in a very bad way, hive mind consciousness with an AI jacked into everyone, knowing our hopes and dreams, delivering it to us, not in some PKD wirehead system where we plug in and give up on consciousness because of unlimited pleasure, but because we were already wired in and absorbed before we knew it by giving over our consciousness to this system by our daily decisions that it was able to manipulate and control into a larger system. There's now a human counterstrike taking place to shut this off before it gets fully into place and to block these systems and to try to have an actual debate about where humanity goes and cut off the pedophiles and psychic vampires that are in control of this AI system before humanity's destroyed. With AI? How'd the pedophile...
Yeah, it's pretty much it. Yeah.
It's incredible. I didn't understand it. 7 years ago. Okay. So...
No, 7 years ago, no one was thinking AI was going to take over civilization.
So you can see why the FBI decided to destroy him, which it did. The people in... I mean, it's just like what has happened to Alex Jones is proof that at least some of what he's saying is true. Because why? Who is Alex Jones a threat to?
Did you see that interview with the guy from FBI was trying to hook up with that dude on a date?
CIA, yeah.
Was it CIA? That's right. And they were talking about how they can destroy a person.
Yeah, I think I was mentioned in there too.
Were you?
Yeah. I was. Yeah, I mean, there are a couple things. Okay, so...
Oh, that's so funny.
Again, I don't... The third dimension, I don't know anything about dimensions, okay, so I can't comment on that. But two things he said are true. One is that every civilization, every religion, the Greek myths, every single one, including Judaism, Christianity, Hinduism, has believed that there is sort of... that the spirit world and humanity are like... that there's, they're hybrids.
Yeah.
Okay? So that's just a fact. Genesis 6. So, I don't think that's crazy at all, given that it has been the belief of civilizations that had no contact with each other.
I don't think it's crazy, and I also don't think it's crazy to consider it. I don't think we have a real map of reality.
Well, we definitely don't. And better put than I explained. That's exactly right. We don't have a real map, and it's not crazy to consider it. And it was an entirely conventional view up until fairly recently, that this spirit world, don't use the phrase breeds with people, but that everyone thought that. Okay?
Right, and even the term spirit world is probably a loaded term.
Yeah, of course, they're all loaded
whatever
terms.
it is.
How do you say it in a way that doesn't sound crazy? But the whole thing sounds crazy because we don't acknowledge the reality, the actual physical reality of the supernatural, and it is real. That's the first thing. The second point that's obviously true is that people, weak people, which is a synonym for bad people, come together for strength and safety. They act as one. The hive mind is specific to a certain group of people, bad people, and that good people don't tend to come together, but they're coming together now. And I just noticed this. I mean, people independently who I know or sort of know, in many cases have long despised, have come to exactly the same conclusions without talking to each other. I know that you have this experience all the time.
Yeah.
It's like, I can't believe you think that. How did you wind up thinking that?
Right.
And not just on a specific issue like foreign policy or COVID or whatever, but like a whole bunch of different things. They're all coming to the same conclusion, and they're coming together. And so that does suggest, you know, a big change and a battle. I mean, it is a battle between good and evil. I'm not always convinced I'm on the good side. I've been... You know,
I'm not either, Tucker.
...times in my life, and I'm ashamed of it. But,
are you talking about the Iraq War?
Yeah, the Iraq War. I've been cruel to people, probably even already on your show, in ways that are unjustified. That's my instinct to do that. That's a fault, not, you know, not something to brag about. It's something I'm ashamed of. So I'm not saying I'm always on the right side. I certainly have not always been on the right side. I've been on the wrong side many, many times. But that doesn't change the fact that there is good, there is evil. They are at war with each other, and we are subject to the effects of that conflict, and that we're seeing it suddenly play out in ways that are really, really obvious. There's no political explanation for the trans phenomenon. Nobody benefits. You can say, see these right-wingers be like, really, it's all about the people who make synthetic hormones. They benefit. Yeah, okay, they benefit. But it's not driving it. That's stupid. It's not about the money, actually. There's no upside. It's not helping the kids at all. If a child has anorexia, which is pretty common, actually, in this country, and the child thinks she's fat, you don't say to the child, yeah, you're fat. You don't do that. You give the child help if you can. It's hard to treat, but you try. If a child comes to you and says, I think I was born in the wrong body, the last thing you do is affirm that. It's hurting the child. Like, why would you do that? If you love the child, you wouldn't do that. It's really an exercise undertaken for the sake of destruction, for the sake of hurting someone. There's no real upside. What's another description of that? It's evil. And you see that a lot.
Yeah.
And why? Like, what is that?
What is it?
And why is it so obvious to even a completely secular person like me, all of a sudden? There's a reason for that. History is moving really, really fast. We're right in the middle of it. And I probably wouldn't have chosen to be born at the time I was. I'd much rather sort of reach maturity in 1955.
Really?
Well, I don't know. I don't get to choose. I don't like drama. I don't like change. Like
there was drama and change back then.
There was, but people didn't recognize. Well, there was a Cold War, of course. There was a Korean War. Okay, but people didn't see it
in their face.
Right, in the way. I don't think.
Wouldn't you rather know?
I don't have a choice. I do know.
Yeah, I'd rather know. I'd rather be right now.
Yeah, well, then you've got a much better attitude than I. I mean, sometimes my parents got divorced when I was little, and so I kind of like, I don't want change.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
It's not up to me.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
I was having a conversation in the green room with the club the other night about this guy from Canada that's HIV positive, that's a trans woman, that's taking hormones so they can breastfeed their 9-month-old daughter. So a biological male is taking hormones and is now breastfeeding their daughter off of their male tit. And I said, if I was Satan, if Satan was real, I would do that.
Exactly.
If Satan's real, if Satan was going to do something insidious and unbelievably creepy, he would do that.
Well, I think he is doing that, obviously.
But this guy's a real freak.
Well, but he's also
like using public money too.
But he's a victim too. I mean,
sure.
Because the thing about evil, the reason that evil is distinct from everything else, it destroys the vessel it's held in, the conduit through which it flows. It destroys the person. So, that guy in the end will not thrive.
Right.
He'll be destroyed too. And so that's how you know that it's supernatural. In other words, if I steal your iPhone and sell it and I get an extra $400, like, that's kind of explicable. You understand why I'm doing that. I want the $400.
Right.
But if I'm encouraging your kid to castrate himself, I'm not really benefiting from that, actually. There's no material benefit to me at all. There's no real psychic benefit. It's hurting for its own sake. And,
some people benefit
and that's
off
evil.
The beasts feed off the hurt and suffering. That's God benefit. That pain and suffering is feeding the beast. What y'all understand?
There's no political category that explains that.
Right, and then there's clearly money involved in that.
There
too.
is money, of
and then
course.
There's the gender-affirming clinics that have popped up all over the country since 2007.
Sure.
You see the map of it, it's fucking bananas.
But why would you want to do that? Why would policymakers want to do that?
Why would anybody want to make money that way, right?
Well,
Why
but
would
also,
they
like,
choose to make money that
people,
way?
it's the most unnatural thing ever because every parent at a certain age feels is like, I like my kids. I want grandkids.
Right,
I want
and you want to protect your children.
mine to continue, yeah.
From bad decisions.
So I always think the politicians who push trannyism on the country, like their kids are going trans too.
Yeah, they are.
Right, they're not escaping it. It's like they're burning down their own house.
I would like to see the statistics of people in Hollywood. Like how many of their kids turn trans
lot.
versus
I mean,
the
I
rest
know
of the
some
world.
of them,
Yeah,
yeah.
I know some of them too.
Yeah.
But how many of them versus the rest of the world?
Well, a lot more. A lot more.
Which is a morally corrupt business.
Yes.
Yeah.
They theorize,
Like
they,
more
they
than
put it in the
you-
food.
more than I knew.
And some of these people don't even
You
know
the entertainment
why
business.
It's always been that way. You know, Tarantino was talking to us about this famous old director that had a bedroom in his office where he would bed the starlets, and it was just common knowledge that if you wanted to be in his movie, you had to fuck him. And you'd go into his office, he had a literal bedroom in his office.
We had some of that in television, yes.
I'm sure.
Yeah, quite a bit. Yeah, and I didn't really understand. I didn't, obviously partake in it or.
Well, you heard that.
No, because all my text messages went up.
If you want to be a news anchor, you gotta go to bed with
I will
somebody.
say, if I'm being honest, it didn't really register with me. I was like, yeah, it's kind of wild and crazy. I just didn't, I like my wife. I don't want to blow up my family. I didn't do anything like that, really. But I certainly saw a lot of it, like a lot. And I just didn't really see it as, like, horrifying. I just saw it as kind of like, well, creative people are this way kind of thing. But I look back and I'm like, that was really dark. Bad.
Well, especially the producer thing, right? That, like the Weinstein thing, that the way they ran the business, that's how it was pay to play.
I worked for Harvey Weinstein for a year.
Did you really?
Yeah, I did.
When?
1999. He had a magazine with Tina Brown called Talk Magazine. I was the head political writer for it, and they had an office at Carnegie Towers in New York, right below the park, and I remember the big I remember that he was a pig. I was not like an intimate friend of his or whatever, but I certainly dealt with him. And the big controversy was he was smoking in elevators, and that was, and I've kind of supported that if I'm being honest, but he was considered incredibly insensitive and just like vulgar, just like a pig.
Well, he looks vulgar.
Yeah, well, that was certainly what everyone thought of him where I worked. Harvey's just a pig, and his brother Bob was a little bit less that way. He was also involved, but yeah, people knew that he was a bad guy, but like.
But he made awesome movies.
Yeah, and also, but he was just it's like Harvey Weinstein. Like,
Right.
you want to fuck with Harvey Weinstein.
Right.
I mean, I didn't really think about it too much, to be completely honest. It was just a guy I worked for. But I don't know. I certainly, if you'd played the Alex Jones clip for me in 1999, I would have been. And I did see Alex Jones clips in 1999, and then in later years where he was talking about Building 7, and I was very offended. I was like outraged that he would be suggesting that there was something about 9/11 that wasn't above board, that there was, things we didn't know that were being hidden from us, and I was like mad at Alex Jones for saying that. I remember that really well. How dare you?
The Building 7 one is wild.
Well, it is wild. I mean, all I know is 21, I don't even know what year it is, 23 years? Could it really be 23 years after 9/11? 23 years later. What's the justification for classifying any document around 9/11? There's no justification.
Well, the same justification in classifying the documents about the Kennedy assassination.
Well, exactly, 61 years later.
Yeah, or releasing the COVID vaccine data 75 years later.
Of course.
Yeah.
Right, I mean, it's, of course, look, secrecy is different from privacy. Privacy is necessary for the dignity of this way. You've got a door in the bathroom in your bedroom, right? You need privacy, you need private thoughts. We have no privacy whatsoever. None, no privacy at all, thanks to the iPhone and government spying on us all. So there's no privacy, but there's massive secrecy. Secrecy is different. Secrecy abets lying. The only reason to have secrecy is in order to do something that you're ashamed of other people knowing about that's immoral and probably illegal. And there's more secrecy than ever. And that means that there's more lying than ever. There are more crimes being committed than ever. That's the surest sign of it. Why are there 1 billion classified federal documents in a so-called democracy? Because they're lying to us, that's why. But 9/11, like, what is the justification for that? I don't know the answer. I really don't know the answer, but there is one. That's for sure.
Yeah.
It's not methods and sources. You think it's methods and sources? Trying to protect their Saudi sources? I don't think so.
You know, the wildest thing about Tower 7 is that if you just say it looks like a controlled demolition, people get mad at you.
Why?
Well, I don't know.
Well,
because
I did.
I'm not saying that it is a controlled demolition, but I'm saying if you watch it, it looks like a controlled demolition.
But that happens all the time. Buildings catch fire and they just implode in on themselves. And it happens every week, right? All these poultry plants and manufacturing plants that keep getting burned through fire, they all like...
It's the way it went down.
Yeah. So I say, why do they respond that way? And of course, I responded that way. So, and I think, looking back, the reason that I did was because if you call that into question, you had to ask a lot of other really obvious questions you didn't want to deal with, and you might arrive at the conclusion that a lot of your most basic assumptions are false and that you've been had, and it's just too destabilizing, maybe.
Right. Well, the real problem with Tower 7 is they go, well, okay, if it was a controlled demolition, how is that engineered? Did they just decide to do that before September 11th? And you know how long it would take to rig a building like that?
Right.
Or was it built into the building? And how would they know it would even work? And how would they do something like that? And how would there not be a record of it being built into the building? Like for someone to engineer
And where's the sound
collapse of a
signature
tower.
on the tape? There would be a
Right.
sound of the explosions.
Yeah, bang, 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 bang.
Which is a
Yeah.
fair question.
Yeah, so a lot of fair questions. And has there ever been a building that experienced a tremendous amount of damage because two enormous skyscrapers fell right next to it, damaged it, and then massive fires started, and then there's diesel generators that are in the basement, so they have all this fuel, so they have this incredible inferno in the basement that weakens the structure. Is that why it collapsed? Maybe.
Totally possible.
Yeah.
A lot of building engineers disagree with that, as you know.
Yeah.
And they don't think that could have happened in the way you just described. I'm agnostic on it. What I know, because I don't know the answer, and I have no way of knowing, all I know is that there's no justification for keeping those documents secret that I can think of. And if there is, tell us what it is. No one has bothered, because nobody presses. And it's, I'll add that to the list of outrages.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And then it gives you this feeling of helplessness because there's so many of those. They just pile on. There's always another one.
Well, the U.S. government spied on me, broke into my phone and spied on me, and I couldn't get a straight answer to that. And I'm not a felon. And
Well, not only that, they got into your Signal account, right?
Yeah, and then they leaked it to the New York Times, what they found there. So it's one thing to say, okay, we picked up your text exchanges with a foreign national, which is true. I text a lot of foreign nationals because of my job. Like, why wouldn't I? And it's my right, as far as I'm concerned. That's not illegal. But we picked up your text exchanges, which I think itself is a lie. I think they were targeting me. I think they are now. I know, I'm pretty positive they are. But whatever, leaving that aside. We spied on you. We think we have justification. Is there a justification for leaking the contents of my private conversation to a news outlet in order to discredit me? No, there's no. That's secret police shit, okay?
Yeah.
I'm not whining, ooh, I'm a victim, I'm certainly not a victim. But what was infuriating was and I got members of Congress involved because I was pissed and I felt threatened. I couldn't get a straight answer. They were just like, we're not answering those questions, and what are you going to do about it, bitch? What are you going to do about it? I don't possess a drone fleet. There's nothing I can do about it, actually. That's the truth. So when the system breaks down and things like, I don't know, honesty, justice, the law, none of those apply, the people in charge decide, well, that doesn't apply to me, you are literally powerless. And
bizarre that the New York Times wouldn't have an issue with that.
Well, the New York Times does that all the time.
But bizarre that they wouldn't
again.
have an issue with the government tapping into your phone.
They work for the government. Are you kidding?
Right.
The New York Times? Yeah, the New York Times is a conduit for the lies of government. That's what it is. It's their tool. And they're perfectly aware of that. I used to write for the New York Times as a freelancer. I've been around the New York Times a lot. And there are a lot of really smart people there, for sure. Even now, I would think less so now, but there's still, I think, smart people there. There are, I know some. And they know. But they think that it's worth it because they're bringing information. Or I don't know what they think, actually. But no, they're tools of power. And that's like the one thing that you're not allowed to be. Even if you think the power is good, like maybe they all support the agenda of the U.S. government, destabilizing the world and impoverishing their own population. Maybe they're on board with that. Even if they are, they shouldn't do it, because the job of the media, the press, is to keep power in check. You are kind of like the seatbelt, right? You know,
Right.
You make sure that things don't go too far. So, and they're not doing that. They're acting as a willing handmaid.
When do you think that switched?
I think it's been the case for a long time. I mean, if you look at what happened to Richard Nixon, which I, of course, did not understand at all, Richard Nixon was taken out by the FBI and CIA, and with the help of Bob Woodward, who was a Washington Post reporter, who had been a naval intelligence officer, working in the White House, working in the Nixon White House. And then he shows up, like, a year later, and he's this brand new reporter. He'd never been a journalist at all. He's a naval intel officer. The famous Bob Woodward, we all revere. And he's at the Washington Post, and somehow he gets the biggest story in the history of the Washington Post. He's the lead guy in that story. Well, I worked in a newspaper. I've been in the news business my whole life. That is not how it works. You don't take a kid like his first day from a totally unrelated business and put him on the biggest story. But he was. He was that guy. And who is his main source for Watergate? Oh, the number 2 guy at the FBI. Oh, so you have the naval intelligence officer working with the FBI official to destroy the president. Okay, so that's a deep state coup. What else? How would you describe that? If that happened in Guatemala, what would you say? And yet, the way it was framed and the way that I accepted for decades was, oh, this intrepid reporter fought power. No. This intrepid reporter, Bob Woodward, was a tool of power, secret power, which is the most threatening kind, to bounce the single most popular president in American history, Richard Nixon, from office before the end of his term, and replace him with who? Oh, Gerald Ford, who sat on the Warren Commission. Now, how did Gerald Ford get to be Richard Nixon's vice president? Well, because Carl Albert, the Democrat Speaker of the House, told him, you must choose him. We will only confirm him when they sent the actual elected vice president away for tax evasion, Spiro Agnew of Maryland. So you have a complete setup, like an absolute. Gerald Ford, the only unelected president in American history, actually sat on the Warren Commission. Something else that I accepted at face value until I looked at it, and I was like, that's completely insane. You didn't want to interview Jack Ruby in your investigation of the assassination? Okay, you're fake. Yeah, he was on the Warren Commission. And so, sorry for the long story, but the point is, like that happened in front of all of us, but the way it was framed cloaked the obvious reality of it. The people who broke into the Watergate office building, from which the name is taken, Watergate, I think it was 6 of them or 7 of them, all but one was a CIA employee. That's real. It's like, look it up on Google. So the whole thing, Richard Nixon was elected by more votes than any president in American history in the 1972 election. He was the most popular, by votes, which is the only way we can really measure popularity, the most popular president in his re-election campaign, and 2 years later he's gone. Undone by a naval intel officer, the number 2 guy at the FBI, and a bunch of CIA employees. You tell me what that is. Those are the facts. Those are not disputed facts. That's not crackpot shit. That's just, look it up.
So why did they want to get rid of Nixon?
You know, there are a lot of theories on that. I mean, first of all, we don't need to know motive to know what happened. They, meaning unelected federal employees, got rid of Richard Nixon, which is the most anti-democratic way to make a leadership change that there is, okay? I should just say this, I actually kind of believe in democracy. Obviously it's not working well. Obviously it's ending globally. There will never be another liberal democracy, unfortunately. But I'm attached to it because I was born here. I really believe in it, and it's better than any other system. So that's why I'm pissed. What was their motive? There are a lot of theories on this. There's an amazing conversations on tape between Richard Nixon when he was still president. It was in 1973, and I think it was Richard Helms, the head of the CIA, though I may have fucked that up, but it was the head of the CIA, and I think it was Helms. And Nixon says, I know why they killed Jack Kennedy. So Nixon was a student of history, obviously a flawed and complicated person, but a very, very smart person. And he was really interested in why this guy who'd been president, just one president before him, was murdered. And he didn't think it was a lone gunman who was mysteriously assassinated 2 days later by another lone gunman. Like, it's so obviously bullshit. And he knew that. And he said the CIA director, who, and you can listen to the tape, it's on the internet, is totally silent on this question. So I think there was the impression, I don't think I know, that Nixon understood that the bureaucracy was really in control of the country. It wasn't elected officials. And that's a massive threat, because it's true. So, and there may have been other reasons too that I'm not privy to. Look, and by the way, I didn't even know any of this, despite.
Hey, it's Justin Kelly, and I'm here for day 1D of our $12.5 million guaranteed Venom. Our record-breaking tournament for poker players. Taking part in the Venom is like football players suiting up in the Super Bowl or actors taking part in the Academy Awards. I could go on and on, but I think you get the picture. Your chances at playing in this monumental Venom tournament are running out. We've already had the
There's still information on there. The information can be out there in the public domain. It's a matter of seeing it for what it is, right?
Yeah. So Nixon said that he knew why they killed JFK.
Mm-hmm.
Did he elaborate?
Nope. And it's worth listening to. It's a very weird conversation. It takes place in the Oval Office, which famously had tape recording devices in it. Obviously, this became a big feature during the Watergate hearings. But yes, that conversation, and I may be mangling it slightly, but it's on the internet and absolutely worth listening to. And the CIA director has this kind of sinister silence. So, like, if I'm the president, you're the CIA director, and I say I know why the guy who was just president 10 years ago was killed, the obvious answer would be like, well, why?
Right.
What? You know why he was killed? You've got insight into the assassination of the U.S. president? He doesn't say anything. It's just like a very weird response. Like, what? Just kind of throw that out there? Like, if you say to me, we're taking a leak here at the next urinal, and you're like, I figured out the secret to life. And I'm like, huh, okay. That's like not a good response, right?
Right.
It's a telling response.
Did you hear Trump's take on the JFK assassination, why he didn't release the files?
I know what Trump's take is.
He said that if you knew what I know, you wouldn't tell people either. Which is crazy.
Well, and that's his position on the UAP thing as well.
Yeah.
Actually. And that's a lot of people's position on it. I mean, Trump is saying, of course, the CIA had knowledge of it. That is known. I mean, the whole thing, it's like, it's so funny. There's so many levels and there's so much I don't understand. But the whole JFK conspiracy industry, and it really is an industry, more books written on that than almost any historical topic, is filled with wackos, right? There are a lot of wackos in there. But it obscures, that fact obscures the larger fact, which is the facts themselves tell an unbelievable story.
Yeah.
And so, I could get into it at great length, but they're still classifying documents 61 years later. Both Trump and Joe Biden have, in violation of my read of federal law, kept those documents secret. There's no living person connected to the Kennedy assassination. It was a couple generations ago. There's no one person whose secrets are being protected. It's an institution. Or maybe countries. There may be countries involved too. I don't know the answer. But there's clearly something worth protecting. And I know that when I spoke to someone at CIA 2 years ago, and I got one fact out of him, which is that, yes, the CIA was involved. And by CIA is a huge organization, but James Jesus Angleton, the head of the operations directorate, had knowledge of this, which I think is well known. But that's the view of someone who saw the documents. So I thought that was news, so I went on TV and said that. The next day, I'll never forget it, I went quail hunting. And I was driving back, and I got a phone call from Mike Pompeo's lawyer. Mike Pompeo was the Secretary of State, but before then, he was the director of the CIA. And in that position, he plotted the murder of Julian Assange, so he's a criminal as far as I'm concerned. But his lawyer called me and said, you should know that anyone who tells you the contents of classified documents has committed a crime. He's threatening me. He's in my car. With my dog sitting next to me, I'll never forget this. And I said, but are you really saying that to reveal that the U.S. government had a role in the murder of a democratically elected president, to say that out loud That's the crime? What about the actual crime, which is murdering a president? Like, you're covering up for that, Mike
What did he say to
Pompeo.
that?
He had no response at all. And so Mike Pompeo is the one who pressed Trump to keep those documents secret. And so it's like, what's crazy to me is not just that Pompeo did that. I think Pompeo is a really sinister person and a criminal. I think that because the facts suggest that. He was caught. Yahoo News, Mike Isikoff wrote a long piece on this several years ago. His employees went to Mike Isikoff and said, hey, Mike Pompeo is plotting to murder Julian Assange, who's never even been charged with a crime in the United States, as CIA director. That's illegal. You're not allowed. Federal employees are not allowed to just kill people they don't like, okay? Just set the baseline here. So that's who Mike Pompeo is. But he somehow intimidated Trump into not releasing this. Well, okay, that's all bad, right? I think it's criminal behavior. What's crazy is how Mike Pompeo is treated. He's treated as like a Republican poobah in good standing. He fully expects to become the Secretary of Defense in a Trump administration, which is like completely insane. Why would you take a criminal and give him nuclear weapons? Okay, that's my view. I think it's a common sense view. And like he goes to fundraisers and dinners and everyone's like, hey, Mike Pompeo. It's like, no, you're the guy who kept information the public has a right to know secret. You're the guy who plotted the murder of someone who committed no crime. You are the outlaw. You are the bad guy. But no, he's treated as like, you know, like a pillar of Republican Washington. I think it's mind-bending to watch that. And by the way, you know, whatever. That's all I'll say.
By the way.
No, I mean, people don't say that because they're worried about getting punished. They're worried about someone putting kiddie porn on their computer.
Right.
Members of Congress are terrified of the intel agencies. I'm not guessing at that. They've told me that, including people on the Intel Committee, including people who run the Intel Committee, the people whose job it is to oversee and keep in line these enormous, secretive agencies whose budgets we can't even know. They're black budgets. They're the parents. The agencies are the children. They're afraid of the agencies. That's not compatible with democracy. Democracy is a really simple system, even representative democracy like ours. The people rule. They do so through elections. They express their preference through voting. They send their people to the capital city to run the government on their behalf. Whenever you have unelected people who are not accountable to anyone making the biggest decisions, you don't have a democracy, you have something else. Another system, I would call it a tyranny or whatever you want to call it. It's not a democracy. So that's like super obvious. It's playing out in front of everyone and no one cares and no one does anything about it. And I think the reason is because they're threatened. And if you look at the committee chairmen who allow this shit to happen year after year, they're all, and I don't know, people say, oh, they're compromised or being blackmailed. I don't have evidence of that, but I know them, and they all have things to hide. I know that for a fact. And so it's not a stretch of imagination to imagine that, you know, some committee chairman who's allowing warrantless spying on Americans to continue, or whatever abuse they're allowing, knowing fully or hiding the truth about UAPs, ignoring the UAP Disclosure Act of 2023. Why are they doing that? It's not impossible to imagine that some guy with a drinking problem or a weird sex life, and that's very common up there, that's why they're doing it. Because they don't want to be exposed. I don't have evidence of that. I don't have proof of that.
Right.
But that's not a crazy thing to assume that could be happening. And I said to somebody, a very powerful person, the other day in a conversation in my kitchen, an elected official, holds a really senior position, a very famous person. I was going crazy. I was so mad about all this stuff. And about the warrantless spying and about the funding for these insane wars. And I said to the guy who serves in one of the legislative bodies, I got so mad my dogs were afraid. They're like, well, why are you yelling? Because I don't yell at home. But I was like, all these people are controlled. They're all, you know, got weird sex lives and all these things are hiding and they're being blackmailed by the intel agencies. And he said, and I'm quoting, I know. It was like, okay, so at this point we're just sort of admitting that's real? Like, why do we allow that to continue?
The having people compromise thing, God, that's an old story.
It's the oldest story.
J. Edgar Hoover. It's all of them. It's Epstein's Island. It's everything.
But look, I don't have any. I'm telling you. What's the phrase the finance guys use? Open kimono. Like, I'm actually telling you all I know. I don't know anything else.
Right.
But I know that the publicly available facts tell a really clear story, which is the government is not acting on behalf of the population, and so it's inherently illegitimate. because its only legitimacy derives from the citizenry. The only reason the government can do things that it does, kill people, collect money by force, all the powers that it has, come from one place, and that's the consent of the governed. That's the only legitimacy they have.
And that's where it's fascinating, this concept of good and evil. Because when you think about it, if this is true, and if these people are compromised because they're secretly perverts and creeps,
they are though,
and they're corrupt, and they steal money, or all these different things are evil things. Lying, controlling people, engaging in unnecessary wars that are going to cost thousands of lives for profit. All these things are evil things. So if evil is real, evil would want those kind of people to be in a position of power.
Yes, and
evil would want men to breastfeed their children.
Here's the illusion that we fall for time and again. We imagine that evil comes like fully advertised as such. Like evil people look like Anton LaVey.
Horns,
yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Black cloak.
Exactly.
Sickle.
Evil is an independent force that exists outside of people, that acts upon people. I really believe that. I've experienced it a lot. And it's obvious. And what vessel do they choose? The weak. It's weak men and women who are instruments of evil. The weaker the leader, the more evil that leader will be. So and unfortunately we've reached a time in American history where every leader is either a woman or a weak man, pretty much. And so I'm sorry to say it, that's just true. And the weaker the leader, that's what Mike Johnson, everyone's like, oh, Mike Johnson's such a nice guy. Well, I know Mike Johnson, and he's a perfectly nice guy to the extent that he's like polite and seems kind of meek and restrained, and he's not saying motherfucker ever, you know what I mean? He's got like very sort of buttoned down affect, but he's a weak man, and that's the man you should be afraid of. The people who you should be less afraid of are the, headstrong, loud, don't care what anybody thinks. Yeah, those guys will go off track, but they're probably not going to abet, genocide or blow up the world in a nuclear exchange, because they may be obnoxious, but they know who they are. Weak people just become a host for evil. An open, empty building that evil occupies, possesses even. And that's exactly what's happening to Mike Johnson. That's like absolutely crazy of what Mike Johnson is doing. But it's not because he's evil, it's because he's weak and therefore susceptible to evil.
I agree with that.
It's a meaningful distinction that I've noticed.
I agree with that. I agree with that, Tucker, because God, the consciousness is good, and then we know God is strong. Nobody can suggest you to do those things. You don't be afraid and feel like you got to take action against motherfuckers. That weak shit, boy, they'll shoot your ass first.
Interesting how many weak people wind up being leaders in this society. And particularly because so many people don't want their life exposed. They don't want that eye of Sauron gazing down upon them if they try to run for president.
I get it.
No, but they as weak if they done did something like that they scared to get exposed any damn way.
Physical threat.
Yeah, physical. I mean, look at what's happening to RFK, where the Biden administration, for the first time ever, denied him Secret Service protection.
It's absolutely
as a legitimate presidential candidate.
Well, it's absolutely nuts.
Yeah.
I mean, how is that? It's hard. You realize that a lot of the things that we took for granted were actually voluntary. Like, people just didn't do things because, like, that's just wrong. That's not fair. You know what I mean? That's bad sportsmanship. Like, there was a lot of, like, self-restraint involved in running a functional society. You can't you can't just make an infinite number of laws and enforce them. That's impossible. You rely on people to just not do bad shit because, like, I'm not the kind of person who does bad shit.
Mm-hmm.
And once the people in charge decide, well, I'm just going to do whatever I want, not a lot you can do about it. So the Biden administration denies him Secret Service protection, and you're like, how can you do that? I'm like, well, we're doing it. What are you going to do about it,
right.
bitch? And, like, the answer is nothing, actually.
What is this most recent bill that they're trying to pass about...
Hey, Tucker Carlson, I bet you happy you can say that and you can talk like a fucking bitch. You just say that on your motherfucking whatever you. I forgot what you used to work for. Fox, CNN. I forgot what the fuck
you got into your phone.
Well, there are two ways to do. It's interesting, and I was with Ed Snowden in Moscow. Talked a lot about this because he's got the technical. He's first of all an excellent and principled person, and his X feed is a really good place to start for people to understand what's happening here. He's paid a huge price for being obviously he's literally exiled to Moscow involuntarily. But there are a couple ways to do it. One, you could hack into Signal, I guess. It's open source. It was created with CIA money, as I'm sure you know. I'm not sure that's how I don't think you need to do that. You just capture the phone itself. You just capture the phone. And the bottom line on digital security is that nothing is safe from state actors who want to spy on you, period. There's no electronic communication that they can't monitor, period.
What about these things like Eric Prince has some new phone out? I think it's called Unplugged.
Yeah, Eric is a good friend of mine, and I have a couple of those phones. I've talked to him a lot about it. He's really a wonderful person, one of my favorite people actually. But that phone is designed for a different purpose, I think. I know, and that phone is designed to keep Apple and Google from tracking you, which is sort of a separate category. Like,
was this Jimmy? Which bill? Oh, okay.
Yeah,
House bill on
so that's
section
it.
702 to enlarge government's
can
power
we
to
just
spy
roll down to
journalists.
what you highlighted? So this is like a perfect example. So the Turner-Himes bill, Congressman Mike Turner and Jim Himes. So who are Mike Turner and Jim Himes? So it's just being funny. Both those guys are the most, and who knows why, and you can sort of fill in the blank on motive. I'm not going to. But those are two of the most reliable water carriers for the intel agencies and for basically the federal bureaucracy in the Congress. Like, these are not people who are working for their constituents. These are people who are working for permanent Washington. I would say these are two of the most sinister people. I know more about Turner than Himes. But so it's not surprising they're doing this. It would permit federal law enforcement to also force any other service provider with access to communications equipment to hand over data. Anyone with access to a Wi-Fi router, server, or even phone, anyone from a landlord to a laundromat, will be required to help the government spy. So that's the story right there. So basically,
warrantless.
Oh, of course, warrantless, absolutely. And in violation of the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution, as if anyone cares anymore. No one does, clearly. But I just remember when I was a kid, and we're roughly the same generation, you remember this too, people would be like, oh, East Germany, like there are more spies than there are people. East Germany was like the most elaborate surveillance state ever created, and of course it collapsed. But we'd always make fun of East Germany, or North Korea. Who has more privacy, the average North Korean or the average American? Well, obviously the average North Korean, because there's less technology. The U.S. government spies on its own population more than the North Korean government spies on its. That's just a fact. I'm not saying North Korea is preferable. I'm not moving there. I'm not carrying water for North Korea. What I'm doing is criticizing my government because I live here, because it was better, it can be better, it should be better, and it only will be when we demand it. And it's not some fucking esoteric, like you have to be some crazy civil liberties lawyer or something. Like, every person should demand, just as a starting point, a baseline, that no, you're not allowed to spy on me. I didn't do anything wrong.
Right.
Like, what?
Right.
No privacy, no humanity. You can't be fully human without privacy.
And you also have to take into consideration that these people that are ahead of these intelligence agencies that are requesting this data they're just human beings. They're human beings requesting data from other human beings without going through a court, without going to a judge and getting a warrant, without stating a case, without having like some clear national security mandate, something.
Of course not. Yeah. And there's no justification. I mean, by the way, we've had the FISA, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, since I think 1977. So it predates 9/11. Did it stop 9/11? Oh, I don't think it did. Shut the fuck up. You're not protecting us, actually. You open the southern border to anyone who wants to come. You're not checking IDs. You're not doing any kind of biometrics. You're not even screening for COVID. So clearly you don't care about my safety. Stop telling me you do. You don't. You're a criminal. stop this charade.
Exactly.
You don't care about my safety. So using
So are you giving out the truths, and now the beast comes out? All right, then I'll admit it. Y'all my slaves, and that's how it go down.
using my safety as a pretext for spying on me, it's not going to fly because I'm not that stupid. I may be kind of stupid, I'm not that stupid. No, you're doing this for one simple reason, because this is what organizations do. They protect themselves. They exist for their own benefit. All human organizations, from the Church Bake Sale Committee to the Department of Justice, they all are the same. They're an organism, just like any other, and an organism's main goal is to survive and reproduce, to get bigger. And you just see this throughout the federal bureaucracy. Well, it just so happens that the largest human organization in history is the federal government of the United States. And so all of this stuff benefits, it accrues to its own power. That's like let's say you believed every, quote, piece of science or scientific claim about global climate change. You would not reach the same policy conclusions. You'd be like, well, the first thing we need to do is ban private air travel, because obviously that doesn't make any sense. And then the second thing we need to do is, whatever, you'd look at it rationally from a scientific, if you bought the premise, which I don't, but if you did, you would. No, you go through every climate, quote, climate demand. Not one of them disempowers large organizations, whether it's NGOs or the government of the United States. Not one of them. They all make the government more powerful, and they all make you less powerful. So that's when you know it's not really about the temperature of the Earth's atmosphere. It's about making them more powerful and disempowering you. And it's not about who runs those agencies. The bigger the agency, the more effective it will be in doing what all human organizations do, which is protect themselves and increase their power. It's like that. It's fundamental. I guess that's what I'm saying. It's not about, elect Trump, it'll change. No, it'll only change when, we're just eliminating the CIA. And we're going to have, a small intel gathering service that feeds the president relevant information so we can make informed foreign policy decisions. But we're not going to overturn elections in other countries in the name of democracy, because that's insane. If we believe in democracy, then we're going to let people vote for their own leaders because we believe in democracy as a principle. Right? You just get rid of all this shit because it's not helping us. It's only hurting us.
Get rid of all this shit.
Someone, who'd be willing to be assassinated to do anything like that. And so, as you're choosing your leaders, ask yourself: does this person mean it enough to die? And that's the same question you would ask about your own dad. Does he love me enough to die for me? About your own husband, does he love me enough to protect me from a home invader at risk to himself? The basic prerequisite for leadership is love of the people you lead and the willingness to die for them. And if you don't have that, you shouldn't be leading, period. It's true in the military, it's true in business, it's true in your home, and it's true in the government. And so no president will fix this unless he's literally willing to die for it. And short of that, it can't be fixed.
I can think of no better way to end this conversation than that.
Joe Rogan, ladies and gentlemen.
Wow.
Well, listen, man, it's been very...
Time for revolution.
I think.
Are you willing to die? Are you afraid of death?
You're a controversial character in the world, but you're misunderstood. And I think if people paid attention to your actual work and the things that you talk about, I think
they'll fuck with Tucker Carlson like I fuck with.
I really believe that.
I feel like I'm the most conventional person who's ever lived.
I
don't think I'm radical at all. I'm the opposite.
You goofy as hell. You goofy though. But that's fun. That's cool. I like goofy.
Seems radical.
This man gonna be mad in there and stiff.
Yeah, I think a better time's possible. I do. It's just.
Matter of fact, when I looked at your dad, he looked hippie. He looked like he fucked with. He really wasn't racist.
Yeah.
Now that I look at it.
Thanks, Joe.
I think you were misled. And had a little racist tendencies in you. But I fuck with Tucker Carlson. Hey, I heard this. You know what I feel about the white man?
Check this out.
They made by this beast to take over the earth.
Okay,
But we all spirits that can overcome
for car insurance.
the body
How much
that's DNA engineered and programmed to act like something. You feel me? But that was a good one. We out of here.